1985 Chaping Village, the 28th day of the 12th lunar month. Suyin walked at a hurried pace. She had to get back and save her daughter, Yaya. She had been reborn. Reborn 2 days before the disaster that befell her daughter. In her past life, on this very day, she had been working overtime in the brightly lit factory for triple pay. She had thought she was fighting for her daughter's future. In the end, she did not even get to see her daughter for one last time. On New Year's Eve, a phone call came from her birth family, saying the child was gone. She had accidentally fallen into the river and drowned. By the time she raced home like a madwoman, all she found was a small earthen grave. Her husband had sacrificed his life a year earlier, and now her daughter was gone too. Su Yin's world had crumbled. She fell gravely ill, her body broken beyond repair, and lay in bed waiting for death. It was only as she lay dying that she pieced together the truth from her neighbor's gossip. It had never been an accidental drowning. Yaya had been beaten to death by her hot-tempered younger brother, Su Shejun. The reason was absurd. 3-year-old Yaya had accidentally soiled his brand new leather shoes that had cost 200 yuan. She also learned another secret. She was not the biological daughter of the Su family at all. Years before, her mother had secretly swapped her with the daughter of an educated youth sent down to the countryside. Moreover, the girl who had taken her place had kept in touch with the Su family ever since reaching adulthood. Suyin died consumed by bitter hatred. Her spirit wandered the village for decades. It was not until the village faced demolition that she sank into endless darkness, still filled with grief and resentment. She had thought it was all over. Yet when she opened her eyes, she was back in 1985. She must save her daughter. Drawing nearer to home, Su Yin's heart rose into her throat. The courtyard gate stood ajar, and inside everything was pitch black, without a single light. It was 7 o'clock in the evening, dinner time. Why was the house so quiet and empty? Yaya. She pushed open the gate, her voice trembling. Silence answered her from within the house. Yaya, Mama's home. She called out again, louder this time. Still no reply. Su Yin's legs turned weak. Had she come too late after all? Just as she was on the verge of breaking down, faint clattering sounds drifted over from the kitchen. Someone was there. Suyin rushed toward the kitchen. No lamp burned in the kitchen. By the faint light filtering in through the doorway, she spotted a small, thin figure squatting beside a large wooden barrel. Suyin flipped the light switch. It was a pig feed barrel. Her daughter Yaya was kneeling beside it, her small hands digging into the sticky pig slop and lifting handfuls toward her mouth. A buzzing roar exploded inside Su Yin's head. Yaya, what are you eating? She lunged forward and snatched the little girl up off the ground. The child in her arms was as thin as a kitten. Startled by the sudden commotion, Yaya stared up at her with wide eyes, her mouth still full of food. Mama. The child's voice was soft and hoarse. Spit it out. It's filthy, spit it out right now. Tears streamed down Su Yin's cheeks. She used her fingers to gently clear the contents from her daughter's mouth. Yaya winced at the discomfort and burst into tears, vomiting everything onto the floor. It was a mess of rotting vegetable leaves and bran, reeking of sour rot. Mama, hungry. Yaya is so hungry. The child sobbed in her arms, her tiny hands clutching tightly to Su Yin's coat. Su Yin's heart felt as though it were being crushed in a fist, and she could barely breathe from the pain. Yaya wore a tattered cotton, padded jacket. Her face was caked in grime. Suyin brushed the hair back from her daughter's forehead and saw a dark purple bruise. Hurts, Yaya's tears rolled down her cheeks. She rolled up the child's sleeve. The thin little arm was covered in bruises of every shade. Suyin was overwhelmed by sorrow and rage. She was a highly skilled factory worker earning 100 yuan a month, a very good wage for the times. She denied herself good food and warm clothes, faithfully sending 80 yuan home every month and keeping only a little for her own living expenses. She had hoped her birth family would treat Yaya well, feed her properly, and clothe her warmly. But they were heartless people. Don't cry, Yaya. Mama is here now. Suyin pressed her cheek against her daughter's cold little face, hot tears spilling freely. She pulled a thick overcoat from her bag and wrapped the small child securely inside it. Mama will make you something nice to eat. Holding Yaya, she turned to search the kitchen for food. The rice vat was empty. The flour vat was empty. Apart from a few dry sticks of firewood, there was nothing on the stove. She had hurried home without bringing any food with her, only money. How could there be absolutely nothing to eat in the house? Yaya whimpered weakly in her arms, her stomach rumbling loudly. Grandma locked all the food away, the little girl whimpered, pointing toward two large wooden cupboards in the corner. Suyin followed the direction of her small finger. Both cupboards were secured with brass padlocks. Who were they locking food away from in this household? Su Yin's eyes reddened. She set Yaya down gently on a bed of straw in front of the stove. Be good, Yaya. Wait here for Mama. She crossed to the corner and picked up an axe used for chopping firewood. Stepping up to the cupboard, she raised the axe and brought it crashing down hard onto one brass padlock. Cling! The lock snapped clean off. Suyin pulled the door open. The rich aroma of grain washed over her. The cupboard was stuffed full of white rice, flour, and a small sack of soybeans. She moved to the second cupboard and smashed its padlock open in the same way. Inside hung a slab of cured bacon, along with dried vegetables and eggs. They had all this food, yet they had let her own daughter starve to the point of eating pig slop. Suyin trembled with fury. She planned first to steam a bowl of egg custard for Yaya, then cook some rice. Just then, footsteps and voices echoed from outside the courtyard gate. Mom, are you really going to buy me that leather jacket? It costs 100 yuan. You're my own son. Who else would I buy it for? One voice belonged to her brother Su Xiaojun, the other was her mother Zhou Yulan. How heartless they truly were. Spending 100 yuan on a leather jacket for their son, while her own daughter starved and ate pig feed. Zhou Yulan and Su Xiaojun walked into the yard. Brutal cold out there. Su Xiaojun rubbed his hands together, irritable. Come on in quickly. I'll get the fire going for you. Don't catch your death of cold. Zhou Yulan doted on her precious son. She had given birth to twins back then. If the educated, woman youth had born a boy, she would certainly have swapped her own son to live a better life. Unfortunately, it had been a daughter. That was why she had swapped the girls. Still, things had turned out well enough. The swapped, away girl would surely give Su Xiaojun financial support in the future. Lost in these thoughts, she shook snow from her shoulders. She lifted her head and met Su Yin's icy stare from the kitchen. She froze. Why are you back? Surprise and displeasure colored Zhou Yulan's tone. Didn't you say the factory was paying triple wages for overtime? What are you doing coming home? Suyin worked for a printing factory owned by a generous Hong Kong boss who paid better wages than most local employers. During the Lunar New Year holiday, overtime pay tripled. The thought of her daughter throwing away that extra income by coming home filled Zhou Yulan with anguish. Suyin said nothing. She simply held Yaya in her arms and stared coldly at them. Su Xiaojun spotted the broken padlock lying on the ground and the wide, open cupboard doors. Mom, look. The locks. They've been smashed. He cried out, pointing. Zhou Yulan's gaze darted over. At the sight of the broken locks on the ground, her face twisted with rage. You wicked girl. Have you lost your senses? She stormed over to Suyin, pointing a finger in her face. How dare you break my cupboard? Where do you get such nerve? Frightened by her shrill shouting, Ya nestled her face deep against Su Yin's chest. Ignoring the outburst, Suyin turned and gestured toward the pig feed barrel and its sour, smelling contents. Her voice was unnervingly calm. Is this what you fed my daughter? Zhou Yulan glanced at the barrel. She showed not a flicker of guilt. Instead, she grew even more defiant. She snuck over and ate it herself. What has that got to do with me? I offered her proper meals. If she chose to be fussy and refuse them, what could I do? Zhou Yulan rolled her eyes, still treating Suyin and Yaya as unimportant. She had always known Suyin to be meek and compliant. Fussy? Suyin laughed bitterly. She pulled up Yaya's sleeve and held out the bruised little arm right in front of Zhou Yulan. Tell me, did she do this to herself? Did she bang her own forehead and get that bruise too? I send 80 yuan home every single month. Where has all that money gone? Suyin's questions grew louder and sharper. Zhou Yulan was stunned. Where had this bold, spoken girl come from? Had she been possessed by an evil spirit? She's just a worthless girl child. Giving her scraps to eat is more than she deserves. Su Xiaojun cut in impatiently. Rage flared fully inside Suyin. She fixed Su Xiaojun with a deadly glare. If you so much as lay another finger on Yaya, I will fight you with everything I have. You, Su Xiaojun stared in shock. This was nothing like his docile older sister. The shock faded quickly. He felt no real fear of her. He had grown up knowing his privileged position in the family. The best food and comforts always went to him. No matter what trouble he caused, blame would land on Suyin instead of him. Even when he had torn up Suyin's high school admission letter, their parents had not punished him. If the village chief had not intervened, Suyin would have been forced out to work to earn money for him long ago. I am your younger brother. How dare you speak to me like this? Su Xiaojun shouted, sticking out his chin. But when he met Suyin's murderous looking eyes, a chill ran down his spine. He had never seen her like this before. He shrank behind Zhou Yulan. If you keep this up, just wait till Mum deals with you. Zhou Yulan's eyes flickered. She plopped herself down on a wooden stool and began wailing at the top of her voice. Heaven above! What sins have I committed? I slaved away raising your child for you. I deserve some gratitude at least. And now this is how I get repaid. You ungrateful girl! If you think I look after her so badly, then look after her yourself. She screamed, shooting venomous glances towards Suyin. In the past, this performance had always made Suyin back down. Suyin remained completely unmoved. This only fueled Zhou Yulan's anger further. Grab that little brat of yours and get out of this house. Leave right now. Suyin let out a cold, quiet laugh. The sound cut Zhou Yulan's wailing short. Get out. Suyin repeated the word, full of scorn. Have you forgotten whose house this actually is? She spoke slowly and clearly. This house was built by my late husband. The homestead land belongs to his family. You have no claim to it whatsoever. You are the ones who need to leave. What did you say? Zhou Yulan scrambled to her feet, unable to believe her ears. You heartless girl. You want to drive me out? I am your birth mother. You would throw your own mother and brother out for that unwanted child. Su Xiaojun roared furiously. You brought this on yourselves. Su Yin's voice held no warmth. You let Yaya eat pig slop. You beat her until her body is covered in bruises. You have no right to stay here. You have 2 days. Pack your belongings and leave. I won't go. Not ever. Coming to her senses, Zhou Yulan threw a tantrum. This is my home. My son still needs a place to get married. Where do you expect us to go? Over my dead body. You will never chase us away. Su Xiaojun shouted along with her. Mother and son had no intention of moving. Suyin gave a cold smile. Very well. You refuse to leave. Holding Yaya close, she turned for the door. I am going to fetch the village chief right now. Let him pass judgment. I will let the whole village see how the widow and orphan of a martyred soldier are mistreated by their own mother and brother. Everyone will learn how you spend the money I send home while my daughter starves and eats pig feed. Those words struck fear into them. As the widow of a martyr, Suyin was afforded special respect in the village. They had dared to mistreat her only because she had once been gentle, filial, and easy-going. Moreover, the village chief had always stood on Suyin's side. If word spread, they would be shamed and despised by every villager. Stop. Don't go. Zhou Yulan panicked and grabbed Suyin's arm, instantly changing her tone. Inzi, let us talk this through. We are family. There is no need to make a public scandal. We will move. We will move. Suyin pulled her arm free and stared coldly at her. Su Xiaojun grew anxious. He dragged Zhou Yulan into the corner by the doorway and lowered his voice. Holding Yaya and pretending to soothe her, Suyin listened closely. Mom, are we really moving? Su Xiaojun's voice was full of frustration. I told Suehua I would bring her here on the 5th day of the Lunar New Year. If she sees us back in that crumbling mud house, she will break off our engagement. I cannot stay unmarried forever. Can you not use your brain? Zhou Yulan pinched his arm in exasperation, whispering even more quietly. Your sister is only saying these things out of anger over that little girl's suffering. We will agree to move for now and stall for a couple of days. Once her temper cools, she will be as easy to manipulate as before. Do you truly believe she would cast us out for good? I raised her for 20-odd years. I know exactly what she is like, a soft-hearted pushover. Fine, fine. I will not argue with you. Zhou Yulan adopted a forgiving demeanor. Your brother has to go to our uncle's house to help slaughter a pig today. I will go over there to give them a hand too. We will get out of your way. She was convinced Suyin was only having a fit of temper and would return to her old self once her anger faded. Su Xiaojun looked displeased, yet Zhou Yulan tugged him by the arm and pulled him toward the exit. Halfway to the gate, Zhou Yulan paused. Her eyes drifted greedily toward the open cupboards. She rubbed her hands together and tried to negotiate. Our uncle is throwing a feast for the pig slaughter. I will just take that cured meat, lard and some rice with me. Suyin held her daughter in one arm and stood directly in front of the cupboards. She picked up the axe in her free hand. In that moment, Zhou Yulan felt as if she were looking at a complete stranger. Fear rose in her chest and she stopped advancing. Fine. Keep everything for yourself. Ungrateful girl. With that, she dragged Su Xiaojun out of the yard, still muttering curses. Once they were gone, the tension drained slowly from Su Yin's body. She looked down. Yana in her arms was weak with hunger. Su Yin wasted no time. She cracked eggs and steamed egg custard. She scooped out half a bowl of fine white rice from the cupboard and carefully sliced a small piece of fatty and lean cured bacon, chopping it finely into mincemeat. She lit the fire, boiled water, rinsed the rice, and set the egg custard to steam alongside the cooking rice. Soon, a delicious aroma filled the kitchen. When the congee and egg custard were set before her, Yaya's eyes lit up. Mama, smells good, eat slowly. Be careful, it is hot. Suyin spooned up a mouthful, blew on it repeatedly, and held it to her daughter's lips. Yaya opened her small mouth and ate greedily. Soon the bowl of congee was empty. Yaya patted her slightly full little stomach and let out a satisfied burp. Suyin finally breathed a sigh of relief. She heated a large pot of hot water and poured it into a wooden tub to bathe Yaya. When she peeled off the child's filthy, hardened cotton, padded jacket, her heart ached all over again. Yaya's body was covered in bruises and old scars. Her little girl had been beaten repeatedly. My poor baby, does it hurt? Su Yin's voice shook. Yaya reached up and wiped her mother's tears away. Mama, Yaya does not hurt anymore, don't cry. My sweet child. Mama is here now. No one will ever hurt you again. Suyin held her daughter tight. Okay, Yaya replied in her soft childish voice. She hated seeing her mother sad, but her lips trembled and she began to cry anyway. Before Mama had come home, she had had a terrible dream. In the dream, Grandma and Uncle had come back and ordered her to work. She had accidentally dirted Uncle's new leather shoes. Then Uncle had hit her, and it had hurt so badly. Uncle had shouted that those were his most precious shoes, barely worn. She had apologized over and over, but Uncle had stayed furious. Little by little, her strength faded and she could barely keep her eyes open. She had still been faintly conscious, not truly dead. But Grandma and Uncle had thought she was dead and thrown her into the river. The winter river water had been ice cold. She had wanted so badly to live, to see her Mama one more time. Yet she had had no strength left. It had only been a dream after she woke up, and she had been terrified. She had not dared make a sound when she heard footsteps outside. Then Mama had come home. It was such a wonderful thing. But the memory upset her so deeply that she burst into loud sobs. Suyin had no idea what had upset her child. She grew anxious. What is wrong, Yaya? Did I hurt you? Are you still hungry? Is something sore? Yaya shook her head. Mama, Yaya just missed you so much, Woa. Suyin held her weeping daughter, her heart breaking with pity, and soothed her gently in her coat. After roughly 5 minutes, Yaya's crying subsided. Suyin prepared to finish bathing her. Yaya's hair was full of louse eggs. Her skin was dotted with flea-bitten red marks and scratches she had made herself. Cleaning this thoroughly would be difficult. In the countryside, people sometimes used insect-killing powder and even dichlorvos to get rid of head lice. They would smear it into the hair, wrap the head in a towel, then comb out the eggs with a fine, toothed lice comb. Suyin had received an education and knew such harsh chemicals would harm a small child's body. Yet if the lice and fleas were left untreated, Yaya would keep suffering from unbearable itching. She thought for a moment and said, Yaya, Mom is going to shave all your hair off. Worried that her daughter would be upset, she added, your hair will grow back. Mom will buy you a pretty little hat. What color do you like? She had expected Yaya to be very unhappy, since little girls loved looking nice. To her surprise, Yaya did not object at all. She just smiled and said, Mommy, be gentle. All right, Mommy will be gentle. Suyin fetched a pair of scissors and cut off her daughter's long hair. Then she used a razor to shave Yaya's head completely bald. Yaya stayed perfectly still the whole time, not crying or fussing, cooperating fully. Suyin washed her daughter thoroughly from head to toe with warm water and soap, not liquid. Once clean, Yaya's fine features stood out. She had big eyes like black grapes, a neat little upturned nose. Every line of her face was a miniature copy of her late father Lu Yi. Back then, Lu Yu had been the most promising officer in the village. Many families had wanted to set him up with their daughters. Even leaders in his military district had hoped to marry their daughters to him. Yet he had fallen for Suyin. They dated for half a year before Lu Yi submitted a marriage application to his unit. During a rare leave, he tore down their old family house and built a large blue, brick house that everyone in the village envied. Those days had been hard, but happy. Lu Yi served long term in the military. He had wanted Su Yin to move to the military base to live with him, but he was assigned a special overseas mission. After Yaya was born, Su Yin quit her job to look after their child at home. Lu Yi's salary was deposited into her bank book every month without fail. They lived comfortably, and Lu Yi came home whenever he got leave. That all changed a year ago, when Lu Yi's comrades brought home news of his death, along with his first-class merit medal. Her whole world had crumbled. Just thinking about it made Su Yin's eyes sting with tears. "Mommy," her daughter's soft murmur pulled her out of her painful memories. Su Yin sniffled. She held her freshly bathed, sweet-smelling daughter and walked toward their bedroom. The second she pushed open the door, she froze. Not a trace remained of the life she had shared with Lu Yi. The walls were plastered with messy celebrity posters. Cigarette packs and playing cards piled up on the table, and smelly shoes littered the floor. The room had become Su Xiaojuan's filthy den. Her and Lu Yi's wedding photo was gone too. Sorrow washed over Su Yin. But she could not afford to cry. For her daughter's sake, she had to be strong. She set Yaya down carefully on a chair by the door and stormed inside. She grabbed Su Xiaojuan's greasy quilt, ripped the garish posters off the walls, and gathered all his scattered clothes and shoes. Carrying the huge pile of belongings, she strode to the door and threw it all out into the yard with a clatter. Every last one of Su Xiaojuan's things landed in the snow. She walked back inside, found a barely clean set of bed sheets, and remade the bed. Finally, she shut the door and clicked it locked from the inside. In her past life, she had been too soft-hearted. That weakness had gotten her and her daughter bullied to their deaths. Reborn, she would never show mercy again. Once the bed was fixed, Su Yin held her daughter's warm little body in her arms, feeling a measure of peace. This time, she had saved Yaya. Su Yin reached under her collar and pulled out a smooth jade pendant, the only keepsake Lu Yi had left her. He had told her it had belonged to his parents. She felt a pang of shame. In her previous life, she had been foolish, always putting her birth family first and neglecting Lu Yi's relatives. But now she had a chance to make things right. The pendant grew warm against her skin, yet she still felt cold. The room was cold, the bed was cold. When Lu Yi was alive, he had run warm like a little stove. In winter, she loved curling up in his embrace. How she longed to hold him one more time. She told herself not to cry, but tears spilled over anyway, drop after drop, rolling down her cheeks onto the jade pendant. No matter how hard the future got, she would keep Yaya alive and safe. She would never hand her daughter over to anyone. She would raise Yaya with her own two hands. But how would she earn a living for the two of them? Her mind swirled with worries. Exhaustion weighed heavy on her eyelids, and she drifted off to sleep. Soon she had a strange dream. She stood on vast, empty black farmland. Not a single thing was in sight except the soil beneath her feet. A narrow, clear stream flowed nearby. Beside the stream stood a wooden sign. It read, "Spiritual spring water. Safe for drinking." Smaller text underneath read, "Promotes physical health and strength." Could water really work that well? Su Yin walked over, cupped her hands, and drank deeply. Sweet, fresh water slid down her throat. A wonderful sense of well-being spread through her whole body. All the aches and tiredness from the long day melted away completely. If only Yaya could drink some of this water too, she thought. The thought had barely crossed her mind when her eyes flew open. She was back in her bedroom, still holding the sleeping Yaya tight in her arms. Nothing had changed. Wait. The jade pendant resting against her chest glowed with soft, gentle light. Warmth radiated from it onto her skin. Had that place not been a dream after all? Had the pendant brought her there? She had only thought of Yaya and her room, and she had returned instantly. Su Yin's heart raced. She closed her eyes and thought firmly, "Take me to the spiritual spring." Black soil and the clear stream appeared right in front of her. It worked. She thought of her bedroom, and in the next instant she was back on the bed, Yaya still warm in her arms. She could travel back and forth between the two places. This was wonderful. Could she bring objects through as well? Her gaze fell on an old chipped military-style thermos on the table. She climbed out of bed, picked it up, and focused her mind again. The scene shifted. She stood inside the spring space, thermos in hand. She trembled with excitement. She rushed to the stream, unscrewed the lid, and filled the thermos to the brim with spiritual spring water. If she could bring a thermos through, she could bring other things too. Rice, flour, cured meat, clothing. It was like having an enormous storage space at her fingertips. Still, she dared not bring Yana inside. The little girl was 3 years old and understood too much. Such a secret would frighten her. This truly was a tremendous stroke of luck granted to her. Just as excitement surged through her, loud banging and kicking echoed from the courtyard gate. "Suyin, you wicked woman. Get out here right now." It was Su Xiaojun home. Immediately Zhou Yulan's shrill shouting followed. "You've gone too far. Daring to throw your brother's things outside. I'll scratch your face raw today." Su Xiaojun roared so loudly the roof nearly shook. "My shoes. My 200 yuan leather shoes. Suyin, are you out of your mind?" He was furious. Those shoes had gotten dirty at the hands of that little burden. He had already beaten the girl for it and worked hard to clean them. Now Suyin had thrown them out into the snow. Inside the house, Suyin tightened her hold on her daughter, burning with anger. Her little girl had been hurt because of those very shoes. She would not let this pass. She stepped out of the room. Outside, Su Xiaojun screamed at his clothes and shoes scattered across the snow. Zhou Yulan stood beside him, shouting support. The commotion had drawn all the neighbors. Aunt Zhang's lamp lit up next door. Old Aunt Wang wrapped herself in clothes and peered out. Other villagers hurried over to watch. Spotting the onlookers, Zhou Yulan quickly switched tactics. She plopped down onto the snow and began wailing, beating her thighs dramatically. "Everyone, please judge for me. What sin have I committed to raise such an ungrateful daughter?" She pointed towards Suyin, tears and snot streaming down her face. "I slaved away looking after her child for her, and this is how she repays me. She wants to drive her own mother and brother out in this freezing snow. She threw all Xiaojuan's belongings outside. She wants us dead." The watching neighbors, unaware of the full truth, began to murmur and cast critical looks at Suyin. "Inzi, how can you treat your own mother like this? Yes, it's freezing cold out. Talk things over. Don't be so cruel-hearted." Ignoring their condemnation, Suyin fixed her gaze on Su Xiaojun. "How much did all those things of yours cost?" At her question, Su Xiaojun puffed out his chest proudly. "These are high-quality goods. Bought from the town supply and marketing cooperative." He picked up a Dacron shirt half, buried in snow, and shook it triumphantly. "See? This alone cost more than 10 yuan. And those leather shoes, 200 yuan. Everything I'm wearing adds up to 300 or 400 yuan. Gasps rippled through the crowd. 300 or 400 yuan. Ordinary working families could not save that much in an entire year. For villagers, that sum was unthinkable. Good heavens, that much money just for clothes? 200 yuan for one pair of shoes. Su's boy is terribly wasteful. Throwing fine clothes out in the snow, what a waste." Suyin listened to the murmurs and spoke again in a clear, steady voice. "Our father does odd jobs in neighboring villages. His income is unstable. Mother farms the land and barely earns any money all year round. And you, Su Xiaojun, have no job at all. Where did you get several hundred yuan to spend?" Su Xiaojun's face turned beet red. He stammered and could not give an answer. Suyin went on, "The only steady money in this house besides my late husband's pension comes from me. I send money home every month. You're spending my money." Realizing things were turning against her, Zhou Yulan scrambled to her feet and shouted at Suyin. "I am your mother. He is your own brother. Why shouldn't he spend your money? It is only right." She turned toward the onlookers and called out loudly, "Besides, we look after her child for her. Isn't it only fair we spend some of her money?" Many neighbors nodded, swayed by her words. Daughters ought to support their parents and help their brothers, or so people thought. Suyin stared at Zhou Yulan. No grief remained in her heart. Long, unmet needs of childhood can haunt a person for a lifetime. In her past life, she had always been overlooked. She had craved her mother's care and affection. She had thought she was not good enough, so she worked hard, behaved sensibly, and shouldered farm work. Later she told herself Zhou Yulan just favored boys over girls. She tried to prove women were just as capable. She became equipment maintenance technician at a printing factory, a position mostly held by men. Through skill and hard work she excelled. When she started sending home good wages each month, her mother treated her better. Foolishly, she had believed her efforts had finally won her mother's love. Yet in the end, they had abused her little daughter to death. When she suffered, they withheld food and medicine and spoke cruel words. That was when she finally understood Zhou Yulan would never love her. Because Suyin was not Zhou Yulan's biological daughter. Pulling herself back to the present, Suyin gave a cold laugh. You spend my late husband's pension, live in the house he built with his own hands, and live off the money I send every month. How dare you mistreat my daughter? Nonsense. Zhou Yulan flew into a rage. When have I mistreated her? I fed her and washed her clothes. You ungrateful girl, lying about your own mother. May lightning strike you. Suyin walked back inside. She returned carrying something and threw it hard onto the snow-covered yard ground. It was a small child's cotton, padded jacket. It was tattered, its inner cotton clumped into hard black lumps poking through rips. It was filthy and reeked of stale sweat. Lying beside Su Xiaojuan's fancy new clothes, the ragged garment made a stark, painful contrast. This is Yaya's jacket, Suyin said flatly. I send 80 yuan home every single month. You buy 200 yuan leather shoes for Su Xiaojun, yet you let my daughter wear this. Dead silence fell over the yard. Everyone's eyes darted back and forth between the ragged little coat and Su Xiaojuan's fine clothes. The contrast was impossible to ignore. She ruined it herself. Zhou Yulan insisted. Little children roll around on the ground. No new clothes could hold up to that. Suyin stepped toward Zhou Yulan, her imposing aura making the older woman shrink back. You lock away all the grain at home and let my daughter get so hungry she eats pig slop. Is that also her own fault? You beat her until her body is covered in bruises. The dark purple mark on her forehead has not even faded. Did she do that to herself too? Zhou Yulan retreated step by step, avoiding Su Yin's gaze. I did nothing of the sort. Do not make things up, she shouted defiantly. Children bump and scrape themselves all the time. Are you going to make a huge fuss over every little knock? She pointed a finger at Su Yin and retorted, you went to work in the city and got too big for your boots. You look down on country folk now and you come home picking fights. Su Yin smiled coldly. Fine. You say I am lying. Her voice turned calm and emotionless. Tomorrow we will take Yaya to the town hospital for an examination. Doctors can tell whether those injuries came from accidental falls or beatings. We will get an official medical report. Then I will go to the police and report you for child abuse. Zhou Yulan's face paled. A hospital visit and police involvement frightened her, even though she kept up her sharp tone. Suyin, you have grown far too bold. A little city money has gone to your head. Do not think you can threaten me with the police. They will not care about such trivial family matters. She sneered loudly. Wasting money on a hospital for something so minor. You have more money than sense. Suyin stared coldly at her. She truly intended to get that medical assessment and call the police. But there was no transport tonight, and roads were terrible. Besides, on the second day of the Lunar New Year, Luya's former comrades would come to visit. Luyu had 5 close comrades in arms. After his death, they took turns visiting Su Yin and Yada every year. She remembered that Lin Wei would arrive at the village gate this year. In her past life, overcome with grief over Yaya's death, she had paid him no mind. This time she would ask him to drive them to the county hospital for a full checkup for Yaya. She looked back at Zhou Yulan. Are you trying to stop me from taking her to hospital? Does that mean you admit you hurt my daughter? I admit nothing. I have done nothing wrong. Zhou Yulan denied quickly. The onlookers murmured among themselves. Most still inclined toward Zhou Yulan's side, they worked and chatted with her daily. Spanking a misbehaving child is normal. She is her granddaughter after all. This cannot count as abuse. Yaya has always stayed indoors and avoided people ever since Luyu passed away. Sometimes she runs away when she sees us from far off. Tricky, quiet children are hard to look after. Then a clear young child's voice cut through the noise. Grandma Zhou hit Yaya. I saw it. All heads turned. It was Cui, young daughter of the Zhang family from the village entrance. The chubby fair-skinned girl was about 6 years old. She was passing by with her parents after a feast. Too young to watch her words, she pointed straight at Zhou Yulan. Grandma Zhou hit Yaya on the bottom with a broom. She called Yaya a useless burden. She would not give Yaya food to eat. Sui said earnestly, wrinkling her little nose. Several times when I came to play, Yaya was too hungry to walk. She had no shoes on, and her feet were red with cold. A child's honest words carried terrible weight. The crowd burst into uproar. Good heavens, she really hit the little girl? Refusing to feed her, that is going too far. Can we trust what a small child says? Maybe she is making it up. Do not listen to the child's nonsense. Zhou Yulan hurried to say. I am not lying. Every word is true. Sui protested loudly. Her parents, afraid of getting dragged into trouble, quickly covered her mouth and told her to be quiet. Emboldened, Zhou Yulan forced a smile. Suetsue must have misunderstood. I was only disciplining Yaya. Who did not spank children back in our day? Strict discipline makes good children. Before she could finish speaking, muffled tearful whimpers drifted out from inside the house. Yaya had woken up from all the shouting, crying in her sleep. Do not hit Yaya. Yaya hurts so bad. Grandma, it hurts. Uncle, I did not mean it. Please, Mommy. Yaya is so hungry, so hungry. Yaya's sobs captured everyone's attention. Suyin forgot her argument with Zhou Yulan and rushed back inside. She pulled her daughter tight into her arms. Yaya, do not be afraid. Mommy is here. The little girl in her arms burned hot with fever. Suyin pressed her palm to Yaya's forehead. Her daughter had a high temperature. More and more people gathered at the gate of the yard. Yaya is burning really bad. Her face is all flushed. She needs to go to the hospital. But there's no transport to the county town at this hour. Look at all those wounds on Yaya's body. You can tell she was beaten. Alas, poor child, fresh injuries piled on old ones. It must have been Zhou Yulan and her son who did this. TCH, how heartless. They could lay hands on such a little kid. Exactly. They even tried to twist the truth. Disgusting. The child looks like she's barely hanging on. What if she doesn't make it? The onlookers only talked among themselves, yet none stepped forward to help. Everyone was afraid of getting dragged into trouble. Suyin was not surprised. She had witnessed this indifference in her past life. Right now, her heart was full of worry. The child must not die. Maybe she could try the spiritual spring water. She fetched an old military-style thermos from the room. She remembered the wooden plaque from her spatial dimension saying the spring water could strengthen the body. Whether it could heal sickness, she had no idea. But there was no more time to hesitate. She had to try if there was even the slightest hope. She unscrewed the lid, poured a small bowl of spring water, and carefully held it to Yaya's lips. Yaya, drink some water, sweet girl. Drop by drop, the spring water trickled down the little girl's mouth and into her throat. Suyin then grabbed a clean towel, soaked it in cold water, and laid it across Yaya's burning forehead. Once she finished these things, the noise in the yard died down. A middle-aged man in a dark blue cotton overcoat and a cotton hat walked in, followed by several village cadres. It was village chief Wang Jiangwo. He carried considerable prestige in the village. He disliked meddling in other people's business, yet beneath his gruff manner lay a kind heart. Back when Suyin had nearly had to drop out of school, she had gone to him for help. The village chief had claimed he would not interfere in family conflicts, but she had turned up at his house weeping day in and day out. Grumbling that she was nothing but a troublemaker, he had nevertheless negotiated tuition waivers with the school on her behalf. Before she left for school, he had even slipped her some money, afraid she would starve there. This was her chance to drive Zhou Yulan and Su Xiaojun out for good. Suyin composed herself and tears burst forth. Holding Yada in her arms, she dropped straight to her knees before Wang Jiangwo. Village chief, you have to do justice for me. Her sudden kneel stunned everyone present. Wang Jiangwo pulled a displeased face. Enough, stop wailing. This girl was pulling the same old trick again. Suyin refused to get up, clutching her daughter tightly and sobbing loudly. Village chief, I cannot go on living like this. Truly I cannot. My husband was a martyr. He gave his life for our country. I have no in-laws to rely on, so I came back to my birth family, thinking at least I would have kin here. I earn 100 yuan a month and send 80 yuan home. All I asked was that they give my daughter a full meal. She brushed the hair from Yaya's forehead, revealing the shocking bruise there. Then she pushed up Yaya's sleeve, displaying her scar-covered arm for everyone to see. Village chief, look. Look how they've treated Yaya. They live in a house bought with my martyr husband's compensation money, and this is how they treat his orphan daughter. They lock up all the rice and flour, forcing a 3-year-old child to eat slop meant for pigs. This is no different from murder. They want to destroy both my daughter and me. Wang Jiangwo's expression darkened. To beat such a small child was simply inhuman. Zhou Yulan. Is what Suyin says true? Zhou Yulan quailed under his stare, her legs trembling. Village chief, don't listen to her lies. She's slandering me. I was just disciplining the child. Which kid never gets spanked? What harm is a couple of taps? About the pig slop, she snuck over and ate it out of greed. That has nothing to do with me. Zhou Yulan kept making excuses. Wang Jiangwo boomed, do you even believe your own words? Who would sneak for pig slop if they had real food to eat? Look how you've worn this poor child down. You cold-hearted woman. The village chief had a fiery temper. Once he erupted, Zhou Yulan was too frightened to utter another word. Judging that the moment was right, Suyin stood, her voice icy cold. Village chief, this house was built by my husband Liu Yi, and the land belongs to the Liu family. I demand that Zhou Yulan and Su Xiaojun move out of my house this instant. They are never to set foot in this yard again. At those words, Su Xiaojun flew into a rage. No way. Why should we? Where are we supposed to go? He flushed bright red with fury. I already made arrangements with Sui Hua. She's coming to visit our home on the 5th day of the Lunar New Year. If she sees us living in that rundown adobe hut, she'll definitely call off our engagement. Hearing her son's words, Zhou Yulan also panicked. How had this daughter she had always controlled turned so fierce-willed all of a sudden? She knew the situation had completely blown up, and further tantrums would get her nowhere. She forced a wretched, tear-like smile and softened her tone. Ainzi, I was wrong. Truly I was wrong. She tried to play the family affection card. Don't be so cruel. Xiaojun is your own younger brother. He finally landed a prospect for marriage. Have mercy on him. Let him secure this match. Right after the 5th day of the new year, we swear we will move out, okay? Suyin felt sick watching her put on performance. So you want me to help you lie to that girl? Suyin let out a bitter laugh. Or are you just stalling for time, planning to refuse to leave once the 5th day passes? If Cuehua cannot accept living in an adobe house, then this marriage is not worth having. Better to spare her future misfortune. Zhou Yulan was left speechless by her retorts. Wang Jingwo shouted, you have no right occupying this house. Even if we took this to the police station, you would still be in the wrong. No more talking. Go pack your belongings and leave now. Once the village chief spoke, the watching villagers chimed in. That's right, move out. You went too far. Living in someone else's house yet mistreating their child. That's unheard of. Just go. Stop disgracing yourselves here. Zhou Yulan's face clouded over. She knew they really had to leave today. But she had grown used to the comfortable blue brick tile house. The thought of returning to the drafty, leaky old adobe hut filled her with resentment. Hatred welled deep inside her as she glared at Suyin. This was all that wicked girl's fault. Zhou Yulan tried to buy more time. It's already so late. Before she could finish, the village chief cut her off loudly. You leave today. I will stand here and watch you go. He had no wish to endure more of Suyin's weeping complaints. With so many eyes fixed on her, Zhou Yulan could only gather a few belongings and depart. After they had walked some distance, Su Xiaojun hurried after his mother, stamping his feet in anger. Mom, are we really letting her drive us out just like that? Shut your mouth. Do you want to make an even bigger fool of yourself? Zhou Yulan snapped, heading toward the adobe hut on the eastern edge of the village. The shabby hut sat in the most remote corner of the village. No one had lived there for more than half a year. Its lock was rusted solid. Su Xiaojun kicked hard, and the rickety, wooden door creaked open. A cold gust carrying mildew washed over them. Inside was even colder than outdoors. Cobwebs draped the corners, and thick dust covered the floor. Su Xiaojun tossed his armful of clothes onto a broken wooden bed. Dust billowed up, making him cough violently. Cough, cough, cough. No human being can live in this place. He flopped down on the bed, whose frame creaked under his weight. Mom, I refuse to stay in this hellhole. Su Xiaojun threw a fit. It's freezing, filthy, and full of rats. If Cuehua sees this, she'll break up with me for sure. Zhou Yulan was brimming with pent-up rage, and her son's complaints only stoked her fury. If you won't stay here, where will you go? Sleep out on the street? This is all Su Yin's doing, that ungrateful wretch. I raised her for years, and this is how she repays me. Zhou Yulan trembled with rage. Su Xiaojun joined in cursing. Exactly. She always used to obey you. Today she's acting like she's lost her mind, even throwing our things out. Fuming, he punched the bedboard. Mom, can you think of something else? Go find our biological elder sister. Su Xiaojun lowered his voice, eyes glinting. She's the adopted daughter of a wealthy capital city tycoon now. Ask her for help. If she gives us some money, we wouldn't have to suffer like this. Zhou Yulan slapped his arm hard, then glanced quickly left and right to make sure no one was nearby. Only then did she relax slightly. She hissed sharply. Be quiet. Never speak of this outside these walls. Zhou Yulan lowered her voice further. Your biological sister phoned me a few days ago. She says the wealthy family's household is tangled with schemes. Right now, everything hangs in the balance. In a few years, Once she has secured her share of the family fortune, she will bring all of us to the capital to live in luxury. She poked his forehead and warned him word by word. Do not stir up trouble and ruin our great opportunity right now. Her face turned dark. If Suin finds out and runs to the capital to cause a scene, we are finished. Do you still dream of living in a big villa? Su Xiaojun flinched under her scolding. He understood the gravity of the situation and dared not argue further. I get it, Mom. I was just furious. I won't mention it again. He muttered under his breath. But, is there really nothing we can do? Are we truly defeated by Suin? I cannot accept this. Calm down. Tonight I deliberately left many of our possessions behind when packing, so we can sneak back later, Zhou Yulan said. What if Suin throws everything away? Zhou Yulan tapped her son's head. Use your brain. She can throw away clothes, but what about our cattle, pigs, and chickens? Can she get rid of those? They still need feeding. Suin is alone with a small child. She cannot possibly look after all of them. Sooner or later, we will have an excuse to go back. Su Xiaojun frowned. That will take too long. I have a better idea. Zhou Lei is in the village for the pig butchering feast. Zhou Yulan's eyes lit up. Zhou Lei was her nephew from her natal family, a well-known local thug in the town who led a gang of loafers. He never did honest work. Rumor whispered he had been involved in a violent death. There was no hard evidence, yet everyone in town avoided crossing him. Su Xiaojun went on. Let's ask Zhou Lei to drive Suin away. She relies on the village chief, but Zhou Lei's great-uncle is the town mayor. That carries far more weight than a village chief. Only, Su Xiaojun paused. Mom, you know Zhou Lei demands payment for doing favors. Good boy. Go talk to him. We will give him our yellow ox. It is a fine, valuable animal. Though Yulan winced at the thought of losing the ox, yet she deemed it a worthwhile price if it got rid of Suin. The village chief and his entourage departed, and the yard fell quiet. Suin carried her daughter back into the room and laid her on the bed. She turned to fetch a warm towel, only to find the little girl's eyes open. Big round eyes, like black grapes, stared straight at her. Yaya's cheeks glowed pink. Are Grandma and Uncle gone? Yaya asked in a childish, milky voice. Suin nodded. Yes, they are gone. She laid her palm against her daughter's forehead. The fever had broken. The spiritual spring water really worked. With it, Yaya's health would surely recover. Relief washed over the little girl once she knew Zhou Yulan and Su Xiaojun had left. She let out a long sigh. Finally gone. Then she grinned up at Suin, her eyes curving into crescent moons. Mommy, was I good? Suin blinked in confusion. Good at what? Yaya cupped her mouth with her small hand, whispering with a hint of smug pride. My head was dizzy, but I didn't actually pass out. Don't worry, Mommy. I woke up ages ago. I heard you arguing outside. I cried on purpose for their benefit. Suin froze in shock. She had never expected her daughter to act. How sharp-witted this small child was. Then again, Liu had been brilliant. Yaya took after her father. Su Yin's heart ached yet swelled with tenderness. She stroked her daughter's hair. You clever little one. She knelt to meet Yaya's gaze. You could cry so convincingly. You are amazing. Yaya's lips trembled. At first I wanted to help you, but I really felt dizzy. When I thought about all the times you were away, I genuinely felt sad. I was so hungry many days. There was nothing to eat. Sometimes I nearly fainted from hunger, so I dug wild vegetables in the fields and gnawed leftover bones others threw away. Suihua is my best friend. She secretly brought me food. But once Grandma caught her. Grandma snatched the steamed bun Suihua gave me, shouted Suihua into tears, and forbade her from coming to play with me again. When winter came, nothing grew in the frozen ground. I had no choice, I had to share food with the pigs. Yaya sniffled hard. Mommy, the pig agreed. Su Yin's heart felt as if it were shattering. Seeing how earnest her daughter looked, she played along gently. Tell me, how did the pig agree? I knelt beside the pig trough and said, Piggy, Piggy, my tummy hurts so bad from hunger. Can I eat your food? The pig looked right at me, nodded its head, and went oink, oink, dot. Yaya wrinkled her nose and imitated low grunting sounds. Her imitation was so spot on that she giggled at herself. Su Yin's heart ached terribly. My poor baby, she whispered. You will never need to beg food from pigs ever again. Mommy will buy you mountains of delicious food and cook you the nicest meals. Yada wrapped her small arms tightly around her mother. Mommy, I thought about you every single day, wondering when you would come home. And now you are really here. I'm so happy. She nuzzled against Su Yin's chest, voice muffled. Mommy, I had a dream. I dreamed I was buried deep in cold, dark earth, and I would never see you again. I was so scared, but then I opened my eyes, and you were here. A jolt shot through Suyin. What her daughter described had really happened in her past life. She held Yaya even tighter. That will never happen, Yaya. Mommy is home. I will never leave you again. Half an hour later, Yaya fell asleep. Suyin carefully slipped her arm free. She focused her mind, and the next instant she stood inside her spatial dimension. Besides the spiritual spring, a vast stretch of land stretched out before her. Sui knelt and scooped up a handful of rich black soil. If she planted crops here, harvests would far exceed those outside. The space maintained a mild, constant temperature, so plants would grow fast. She would grow grain here. She stepped out of the space, rummaged through cabinets and found 2 seed packets, rice and green vegetables. Returning to an open patch not far from the spring, she dug small holes with her fingers, placed seeds inside, and covered them with soil. Once she finished planting, she fetched spring water and watered the plot evenly. When she stood up, her back and waist ached. Oh no. She had lost track of time inside the space. What if Yaya woke up alone and got frightened? Alarmed, she exited the dimension at once. The room was quiet. Yaya still slept soundly in exactly the same position. Suyin glanced instinctively at the old-fashioned wall clock. Its hands had only advanced 10 minutes. She stared in disbelief. Subjectively, she had spent 3 or 4 hours working inside the space, yet barely 10 minutes had passed in the real world. Time flowed far faster inside the dimension. Excitement made her heart pound wildly. That meant she had far more usable time than ordinary people. The crops she had sown would ripen much earlier than crops growing outside. This was wonderful. She paced excitedly across the room. Seeds and objects could be brought inside. What about living creatures? Like the pigs, cattle, and chickens in the yard? She remembered clearly how Zhou Yulan had written begging for money to buy piglets and a calf, swindling a full 200 yuan out of her. Those livestock had been bought with her hard-earned wages. They belonged to her. Suyin dressed quietly and tiptoed out into the yard. She walked over to the pig pen and stared at the 2 fat grunting pigs. Taking a deep breath, she placed one hand on the back of a pig and thought, "Enter." The pig vanished into the space. Overjoyed, she sent the second pig in the same way. Next went the young yellow ox in the cattle shed, followed by more than a dozen clucking hens in the chicken coop. She even brought in the simple cattle pen, chicken roost, and pig feed troughs. Inside the space, she herded all the animals to one side, enclosed them roughly with stacked stones, and fed them leftover vegetable scraps and pig feed she had transported over. Completely worn out, she returned to the bedroom, lay down beside her daughter, and quickly drifted off to sleep. Early the next morning, in the run-down adobe hut on the village's eastern edge, Zhou Yulan woke up freezing. Shivering, she sat up. Her thin, damp quilt offered almost no warmth. Snow seemed to be falling harder outside. It was still barely dawn. The thought of Suyin and that little girl sleeping comfortably in the warm blue, brick tile house stoked burning rage inside her. Just then Su Xiaojun came back indoors. She hurried toward him. What did Zhou say? Did he agree to help? Su Xiaojun's face lit up with excitement. He agreed. He will bring 2 of his men over soon. He says he has never heard of a daughter driving her own mother out of the house. He is definitely willing to help us. Wonderful news. Zhou Yulan nearly jumped for joy. Perhaps they could move back tonight. Suyin slept straight until past 9 o'clock in the morning. She had done so much work the night before. In the old days, she would have been racked with backache and unable to get out of bed. It was all thanks to the spiritual spring water. She climbed out of bed, focused her mind, and entered her space. The wheat and rice seeds she had planted had sprouted thin green shoots, growing wonderfully. She walked to the other end of the space. A dozen hens in the chicken coop clucked loudly. On the ground, 7 or 8 round eggs lay in the dry hay. Suyin picked up the eggs one by one and put them into the small bamboo basket she had brought. Holding the basket, she exited the space. Perfect. In her past life and ice, disaster had struck right after the Lunar New Year. With her system, she no longer worried about going hungry with Yaya. In the kitchen, Suyin skillfully lit a fire in the stove. She scooped some flour from the rice jar, poured spiritual spring water from the thermos, and kneaded it into dough. She rolled the dough into thin wrappers and cut them into even noodles. An iron pot sat over the stove, heating up. She sliced a small piece of cured pork fat from the hanging cured meat and tossed it into the pot. The lard sizzled as it heated, and rich grease fragrance filled the air. She took one egg from the basket, tapped it against the pot edge, and cracked it into the hot oil. The egg white quickly solidified, its edges frying golden and crisp, while the yolk stayed runny. She lifted out the fried poached egg and set it in a bowl. She left the leftover oil in the pot and poured in half a ladle of spiritual spring water. The water soon came to a boil. She dropped the cut noodles into the pot and stirred them apart with chopsticks. The noodles tumbled in the clear broth. She seasoned it with only a little salt. The noodles were soon done. She ladled the noodles and soup into a bowl, laid the golden poached egg on top, and sprinkled a pinch of dried chopped green onion from an earthen jar in the corner. A bowl of fragrant egg noodles was ready. Suyin carried the bowl into the room. Yaya, get up and have breakfast. Yaya stirred under the quilt, her small nose sniffing hard. It smells so good. She scrambled out of bed, her eyes sparkling as she stared at the bowl in Suyin's hands. Suyin set the bowl on the table, picked up a piece of poached egg with chopsticks, and blew on it to cool it down. Eat slowly, it's hot. Yaya opened her little mouth and bit into the egg. Mama, it's delicious. She slurped up a mouthful of noodles, her cheeks stuffed full. The noodles are good too. The soup tastes amazing. Watching her daughter gobble the food down, Suyin thought the child was just starved and found everything tasty. That was until she picked up her own chopsticks and sipped a spoonful of noodle soup. Her chopsticks froze mid-air. The flavor was incredible. It tasted nothing like plain boiled water. It was as if it had been cooked in rich stock. The yolk was smooth and dense, brimming with egg aroma, better than any egg she had ever eaten. The spiritual spring water and eggs laid by space, raised chickens were true treasures. Mother and daughter were enjoying their meal when loud banging suddenly echoed from outside the courtyard gate. Someone was kicking the door. Suyin's expression turned cold. She walked to the window and glanced outside. 3 men stood at the gate. Leading them was a man in a flowery shirt and black leather jacket with a center-part hairstyle. She recognized him as Zhou Lei, Zhou Yulan's nephew. Clearly, they had come with hostile intentions. He was a well-known layabout hooligan who never did an honest day's work. Suyin turned to Yaya. Yaya, go back to the room and lock the door from the inside. No matter what noises you hear, do not come out, understand? Yaya's face paled. She clutched at the hem of Suyin's clothes. Mama, are they bad people? Yaya is scared. Suyin squatted down, stroked her daughter's head, and spoke softly. Don't be afraid. Mama is here. Mama will drive them away. Be good, Yaya. Do as Mama says and go now. Yaya nodded hard. She ran back into the room, and Suyin heard the wooden bar slide shut. Suyin stood up, walked into the courtyard, and pulled open the main gate. She stood inside the gate and looked coldly at the 3 men outside. What do you want? Zhou Lei had been ready to unleash a torrent of insults, every swear word on the tip of his tongue. But when he saw Suyin's face, all words got stuck in his throat. He had seen this female cousin before. In his memory, she had always been sallow, complexioned, head bowed, meek, and submissive. Yet the Suyin standing before him had fair skin and bright, dark eyes, watching him calmly. There was an indescribable aura about her that momentarily made him forget why he had come. Zhao Wen, one of his followers, elbowed him when he stayed silent for too long. Lega, what are you staring at? Zhou Lei snapped back to reality, embarrassed. He cleared his throat and resumed his fierce scowl. He pointed a finger right at Suyin's nose. Suyin, you've grown bold. You even dared to throw your own mother out of the house. I'm here today to stand up for my aunt. If you know what's good for you, open the gate and invite my aunt and cousin back home. Or else, you'll regret it. You ought to know I've got blood on my hands. Zhou Lei spoke dramatically, striking the pose of a gang boss from old movies. Ordinary people would have been terrified. But Suyin was not afraid of him. After her death in her past life, she had wandered as a disembodied spirit for a long time and knew many secrets unknown to others. For all his bluster, Zhou Lei was nothing but a paper tiger. He had claimed countless times that he had killed someone. Yet when the police caught up with him, he had wet himself from fright, crying and admitting it was all lies. What was more, Zhou Lei had prospered and made plenty of money after turning 40. Suyin saw no point beating around the bush and said straight out, "How much did my mother pay you to come shouting at my door during New Year?" Zhou Lei froze. Before he could think of a reply, his other follower, the big, simple-minded Luo Chao, blurted out honestly. B. Boss, you said we came here to uphold justice. Why did you take payment? B. Boss, that's wrong. Zhou Lei's face turned beet red. He wanted nothing more than to kick the fool senseless. If his smarter underlings had not all gone home for the new year, he would never have brought these two useless fools along. Zhou Lei tried to salvage his pride as a gang leader. He puffed out his chest and coughed. My aunt gave me something, but that's beside the point. I've been around a long time. I value bonds above everything else. Family bonds. He pointed at Suyin, putting on a pained, reproachful look. How could you drive your own mother out? Are you even human? Such unfilial behavior ought to bring thunder down on you. Behind him, the simple-minded Luo Chao stammered in agreement. Right. B. Boss is right. As he spoke, he sniffed hard. An indescribably delicious scent drifted out of the house and filled their nostrils. Luo Chao's stomach rumbled loudly. He mumbled quietly. It smells so good. Looking at these three ridiculous men, Suyin could not even work up anger. She asked plainly, would you like some breakfast? Luo Chao's eyes lit up. He nodded without hesitation. Yes, please. Zhou Lei nearly choked with rage. He slapped the back of Luo Chao's head. Eat. All you ever think about is food. You idiot. After scolding him, Zhou Lei himself swallowed hard. The fragrance was overwhelmingly tempting. But he could not back down. He was the boss after all. He knew very well which was worth more, a cow or one meal of breakfast. Zhou Lei stuck out his neck and snarled at Suyin. Don't think a meal can buy us off. I'm telling you, no way. He never finished his sentence. Suyin had already turned and walked toward the kitchen. There is more cooking if you want to come in. Her calm voice drifted out from the kitchen. Troubles that could be solved with one breakfast were well worth the price. Zhou Lei watched her walk away, feeling as though he had punched a sack of cotton wool. He shouted toward the kitchen, putting on a fierce front. I'm warning you. We will not be bought. Absolutely not. Beside him, Luo Chao could hold back no longer and trotted eagerly toward the kitchen. Before Zhou Lei could yell at him, Zhao Wen, his other follower who had kept a stern silence this whole time, stepped up beside him. Boss. Zhou Lei felt a flicker of relief. Finally, someone sensible. He was about to say, at least you understand. Instead, Zhao Wen said, Boss, move aside. He squeezed past Zhou Lei and hurried straight into the kitchen without looking back. Zhou Lei was utterly dumbfounded. These two traitors. He stamped his feet in frustration where he stood. But that tantalizing smell hooked at his nostrils, pulling him in. Fine. Things had gone this far. One more breakfast would not hurt. He could always turn hostile once he was full. Yes, he needed a full stomach to deal with her. Having convinced himself, Zhou Lei scowled and stepped into the kitchen. Inside, he saw those two good-for-nothings each holding a large bowl, noisily shoveling noodles into their mouths. One more bowl sat on the table, topped with a gleaming golden poached egg. Seeing him enter, Suyin jerked her chin toward the bowl. She would not waste her spiritual spring water on them. Still, the eggs laid by her space, raised chickens carried a natural rich savor. Zhou Lei huffed, pulled out a stool and sat down. He picked up his chopsticks, took a big mouthful of noodles and bit down angrily. The next instant he froze completely, chopsticks suspended mid-air. Good heavens! What kind of noodles were these? How could they taste this good? The noodles were springy and smooth, the broth unbelievably tasty. He had never eaten anything so delicious in his life. Zhou Lei wolfed down every last bit in his bowl, drinking every drop of soup. He set down his bowl and let out a satisfied belch. When he lifted his head to look at Suyin, his gaze had completely changed. Meanwhile, in the run-down adobe house on the east side of the village, Zhou Yulan paced excitedly, muttering non-stop. Zhou Lei is reliable. He set off early in the morning with two strong men. Right now, that wicked girl Suyin must be on her knees begging for mercy. Lying in bed wrapped in tattered quilts, Su Xiaojun giggled along. Mum, you're right. She's only a woman with the burden of a daughter. She can't stand against three grown men. She's finished. Zhou Yulan looked triumphant. Exactly. Today she will come crying and begging us to go back. When she begs me, I won't agree easily. I'll make her kneel at the courtyard gate for an hour and let the whole village see what becomes of unfilial children. Zhou Yulan waited in the cold, shabby adobe house for nearly half the morning, her legs growing numb from the chill. She paced back and forth, rubbing her hands, straining her ears for sounds outside. Yet she heard nothing but wind. What is taking Zhou Lei so long? He drags his feet doing everything. Could he have taken the reward and done nothing? Wrapped in his quilt on the bed, Su Xiaojun could not sleep from the cold and grew uneasy. Mom, let's go check. I have a bad feeling. All right. Zhou Yulan and Su Xiaojun hurried toward Su Yin's home. Before they even reached the gate, heart-wrenching wails of a small child drifted out of the courtyard. It was Yaya crying. Between sobs she shouted, "No, don't. No, don't." She cried terribly. The words sounded like, "Don't kill." Had something terrible happened? Zhou Yulan and Su Xiaojun stared at each other in shock. Had there been a killing? Zhou Yulan clapped a hand over her mouth, cold dread running down her spine. Could it really be true? The little girl screamed so horribly, it might actually have happened. Suyin had always been stubborn. Zhou Lei had a terrible temper and struck without restraint. Everyone said he had blood on his hands. Su Xiaojun leaned close and whispered anxiously, "Mom, what do we do? It sounds like disaster has struck." "Stay calm." Zhou Yulan forced composure and asked Su Xiaojun, "When you want to ask Zhou Lei for help, no one else was around?" "Of course not. I went very early. No one else was at his old house." Zhou Yulan breathed a partial sigh of relief. Good, still her feelings were tangled. After all, Suyin had called her mother for years, and a faint twinge tugged at her heart. But the feeling faded fast. She was not her birth mother after all. If things had already come to this, what could be done? She had only wanted to teach Suyin a lesson, not have her die. None of this would have happened if the girl had not chased her and Xiaojun out of the house. It was all her own retribution. It was a pity they would no longer get Su Yin's wages. On the other hand, the house would belong to Zhou Yulan. They would not need to hand over the cow to Zhou Lei. Most importantly, no one could threaten her biological daughter's status in the capital city. Zhou Yulan pulled Su Xiaojun close and hissed in his ear. "Listen. When we go inside, act as if we know nothing at all. Say we only came out of concern to check on her. Insist completely that Zhou Lei did the killing, and we had nothing whatsoever to do with it. We were merely trying to stop the fight. Do you understand?" Su Xiaojun nodded hard. "I get it, Mum. I know what to do." Having rehearsed their story, they quickly put on masks of alarm and rushed for the courtyard gate. Zhou Yulan shoved open the half-closed gate and wailed at the top of her voice. "Oh, my poor granddaughter. Yaya, what has happened to you?" She burst into the yard and saw messy footprints in the snow plus several dark splatters that looked like blood. Yaya sat on the threshold, sobbing uncontrollably. The little girl caught sight of Zhou Yulan, cut off her crying instantly, shrank backward, her mouth trembling as she gasped for breath. Zhou Yulan felt more certain than ever. The brat had been terrified out of her wits. Just then the kitchen curtain flipped open and Zhou Lei stepped out. In his hand he held a gleaming kitchen cleaver. Blood dripped from its blade. At the sight of the blood-stained knife, Zhou Yulan's heart skipped a beat. Then wild joy surged through her. Suyin really was dead. She pointed at Zhou Lei, her voice shaking, half feigned terror and half barely suppressed excitement. "Zhou Lei, you, what have you done? What did you do to Suyin?" Zhou Lei stared at her in complete bewilderment. "Aunt? What are you doing here? What would I have done to her?" Seeing that he was still pretending ignorance, Zhou Yulan dropped heavily onto the snowy ground and began to bawl. "My poor daughter. My Ainzi. How tragic your fate is." Between her wails, she glared venomously at Zhou Lei. "I only sent you to talk things over with your cousin and persuade her not to be so stubborn. How could you commit such cruelty? Zhou Lei, you heartless brute. That is my own daughter, your cousin. How could you kill her?" At her shout, Su Xiaojun hurried forward to play his part, pointing and yelling at Zhou Lei. "You murderer! Give my sister's life back." Listening to the pair perform their act, Zhou Lei finally caught on to what they were implying. Confusion turned to blazing anger on his face. "Aunt, you are going too far." He lifted the cleaver and pointed it toward Zhou Yulan. "You came to me and promised me that cow if I beat Suyin into submission. Now you pretend you only wanted a reasonable talk and try to put all the blame on me." Terrified of being framed for inciting murder, Zhou Yulan scrambled quickly to her feet and waved her hands wildly. "You lie. I never said such things. Do not slander me," she shouted toward the gate for effect. "I only came with Xiaojun out of worry for Inzi, raising a child alone during New Year. We walked in and found you committing this terrible crime. Zhou Lei, you committed murder and now you try to claim I ordered you to?" Zhou Lei shook all over with rage at her shameless twisting of facts. "You wicked old woman. You tricked me." He advanced step by step toward Zhou Yulan, cleaver still in hand. "Say that one more time." "What did you just say?" Seeing the dripping knife closing in, Zhou Yulan was scared out of her wits and screamed. What are you going to do? Murderer! Are you going to kill me to cover your tracks? She spun around to run. At that moment a cool, level voice spoke from behind them. Are you just going to leave this slaughtered chicken unattended? Zhou Yulan's scream died in her throat. She froze stiff on the spot. She spun sharply around. Suyin stood unharmed in the kitchen doorway holding an empty basin. What on earth was going on? How are you still alive? Zhou Yulan gaped as if seeing a ghost. Suyin let out a cold laugh. Why? Are you disappointed I did not die? Her heart turned ice, cold. For a long time she had treated Zhou Yulan as her real mother. Yet Zhou Yulan had wished her dead. A few hours earlier, after Zhou Lei and his two followers had finished their bowls of noodles, they had completely switched sides. Is there any more? Luo Chao held out his empty bowl, staring hopefully at Suyin. Suyin considered the situation. She was short-handed. The snow disaster was coming. The kitchen roof needed reinforcing, firewood supplies were insufficient, and there was still house cleaning to finish. From her past life memories, the snow disaster would last half a month and block all roads. It would strike around the 5th day of the Lunar New Year. There was still time to get ready. Would you like to eat chicken? Suyin asked. The three men nodded vigorously. Then you have to work. Chop firewood, slaughter the chicken, repair the roof. Suyin spoke evenly. 3 jobs for 3 of you. Divide them between yourselves. Work well, and we eat chicken for lunch. Zhou Lei felt utterly strange. He had come here to pick a fight. How had he ended up taking orders and doing chores? What had become of his dignity as a gang leader? Suyin, what gives you the right to assign? Before he could finish speaking, Luo Chao beside him let out a chuckle. I'll chop firewood. That was all he knew how to do. Zhao Wen wore a serious expression. I'll fix the roof. He had already sized up the situation. Though the roof was somewhat tricky, it was no big deal for him, and he could get it repaired quickly. When the two finished speaking, they both turned to look at Zhou Lei. Seeing this, Suyin made the arrangements directly. All right then, Zhou Lei, you slaughter the chickens. Zhou Lei was clearly displeased. Hey, why do I have to? Suyin cut him off. There are 4 chicken legs in total. 1 for me and 1 for Yaya. The remaining 2 go to whoever finishes their work first, along with 1 chicken wing. These were the choicest cuts from the chicken. Zhou Lei's eyes lit up. Where's the knife? Hurry up. Right away, some chopped firewood, some caught chickens, and some mended the roof. Everything was going smoothly until the second chicken. Zhou Lei had slit its neck, yet it was not fully dead. It flapped its wings and darted wildly across the snow, splattering blood everywhere. Yaya, who was inside the house, happened to see it. The child burst into frightened wails. It was then that Suyin learned her daughter had been lonely at home with no playmates. Every day she had played with a gentle old hen she named Huahua. Yaya thought the dead chicken was Huahua, and she wept bitterly. Suyin quickly slipped into her spatial storage space and found the old hen pecking at grain in a corner. She penned Huahua separately before stepping back outside. No sooner had she emerged than she walked straight into Zhou Yuan putting on a dramatic show of grief. I didn't do it. Zhou Yuan snapped back to her senses and immediately denied it, forcing a look of concern onto her face. Inzi, I was worried about you. I thought something terrible had happened to you. Cut the crap. Zhou Lei rolled his eyes, unable to stand listening any longer. Holding the still, dripping knife, he pointed at Zhou Yuan. You're the one who snuck up to me. Before Zhou Lei could finish his sentence, Zhou Yuan shot back. What proof do you have? Don't spout nonsense. Just then, Luo Chao and Zhao Wen walked over. We've finished our work. Hand over the chicken legs and wings you promised us. Are you two starving? Can you see I'm in the middle of an argument? Zhou Lei was beside himself with frustration. Luo Chao and Zhao Wen paid him no mind. Food was scarce in these times, and few households could afford generous oil and salt. Neither of their poor families had ever tasted food as fragrant as Su Yin's cooking. Luo Chao said in his simple, honest tone. You two keep arguing. Just save our chicken legs and wings for us. He. Zhou Yuan froze for a moment. Chicken legs, chicken? Her chickens. She hurried toward the chicken coop in the yard corner. The coop door hung wide open. It was completely empty. Apart from a few stray feathers on the ground, plus the 2 slaughtered birds, not a single chicken remained. Zhou Yuan's heart sank. Over by the pig pen, empty too. She rushed to the backyard next. The cattle shed, not only was the ox gone, even the hay cutting tool inside had vanished without a trace. Her world was falling apart. Everything was gone. Zhou Yuan stamped her feet in panic. Those were her whole livelihood. Suyin must have done this, that wretched girl. She ached to lash out at Suyin, but Zhou Lei and the other two were on Suyin's side, so she dared not strike out recklessly. Zhou Yuan stepped outside and shouted at the top of her voice. Everyone come quick. We've been robbed. What evil, my ox. My pigs. All my chickens are gone. Suyin stayed here last night. She must be behind this. Please stand up for me, folks. I get up before dawn and work myself to the bone for this family. I've been driven out of my home by my own daughter, and now she's stolen every last thing I own. Not even one chicken left for me. She wants to drive this old woman to her grave. Zhou Yuan's shouting drew a crowd of onlookers. That really isn't right. No matter what, you shouldn't treat your own mother like this. Truly, that's terrible. Good grief, how could all the livestock disappear like this? And ox and pigs are worth a fortune. Suyin really went too far this time. Even if you chase someone out, you shouldn't steal their things. That's no better than being a thief. The murmurs from the crowd all condemned Suyin. Watching Zhou Yuan roll about on the ground making a scene, Suyin let her empty basin clatter onto the snow. If she wanted to cry and wail, Suyin could do that too. The next second, she cried even louder and more piteously than Zhou Yuan. Why is fate so cruel to me? Suyin plopped down on the threshold, and hot tears streamed down her cheeks. My husband died serving our country. I'm a widow left to raise my child all alone. I thought returning to my birth family would bring me hope. Little did I know my own mother and brother would mistreat my daughter. In bitter winter, my little girl only has thin, tattered clothes, yet my brother Su Xiaojun gets shoes worth 200 yuan. My poor child is covered in wounds. And now 3 men have been brought into this house to bully a widowed mother and her little girl. Everyone knows how hard life is for a widow, woo-woo. If something terrible happens to us, I won't be able to go on living. They are trying to destroy my daughter and me. Her outburst instantly shifted everyone's focus from the missing livestock to a mother hiring men to bully her widowed daughter. Zhou Lei and the other 2 men's faces turned green. Still, what Suyin said was true. They had originally come here to pick a fight. But then they had eaten her food and ended up working in her yard. Besides, Zhou Lei had known nothing about the child abuse before. That mother and son were even more unscrupulous than he was. He might not be a perfect man, but he would never harm a small child. Disgraceful. Zhou Lei shot a disdainful glance at Su Xiaojun. Su Xiaojun said nothing and edged further back into the crowd. The villagers quickly changed their tune. Yes, that's exactly what happened last night. I was there. I didn't see it myself, but word got around that even the village chief showed up. Zhou Yuan is heartless, sending 3 grown men after her own widowed daughter. Zhou Yuan saw public opinion turning against her and dropped that line of argument. She stormed up to Suyin, spittle nearly flying onto her face. Quit playing the pitiful victim. Where are my ox, my pigs, and my chickens? Hand them over right now. Suyin lifted her tear-streaked face and stared at her blankly. What ox? What pigs? I have no idea. She shook her head, putting on an innocent look. Only Yana and I were home last night. How could 2 women possibly move huge oxen and pigs? Mother, have you misremembered? Zhou Yuan stamped her feet in rage. Don't play dumb. You've hidden them somewhere. Suyin repeated herself. I don't know anything about it. She would not budge an inch and refused to admit anything. Flying into a full-blown rage, Zhou Yuan scanned her surroundings. She grabbed a heavy coal, smashing hammer leaning against the wall. Fine. You wicked girl. You won't talk, will you? She raised the hammer, her features twisted with fury. If I can't live well, neither can you. I'll smash this house to pieces. She swung the hammer toward the blue brick wall. Go ahead and try. Suyin stood and shouted sharply. If you so much as crack 1 brick, I will go to the police station this afternoon and press charges for intentional property damage. They will lock you up. Zhou Yuan's hammer froze mid-air. Suyin stepped toward her, eyes red as she challenged her. You sent men to harass me, slandered me publicly, and now you want to destroy my house. You treat me like your mortal enemy. Am I really your biological daughter? Those words stunned Zhou Yuan. She had never expected Suyin to ask such a question. Could Suyin have found out something? That shouldn't be possible. She yelled at once. Ungrateful wretch. What nonsense are you spouting? Throwing the hammer aside, she lunged forward, intending to claw Suyin's mouth. I carried you for 10 months and gave birth to you. If I'd known you would turn out so heartless, I should have drowned you the day you were born. Though she spoke with fierce bravado, Suyin detected panic beneath her words. She knew she had struck a nerve and pressed on deliberately. Is that really true? Suyin pushed her hand away. I find that hard to believe. No real mother would curse her own daughter like that. Let's go to the hospital right now. I hear they can do tests to prove whether we are truly mother and daughter. Zhou Yuan instinctively resisted. I'm not going. Go by yourself if you want. Suyin took another step forward. Why? Are you afraid? As the two women stood locked in confrontation, a rough male voice boomed from the gate. What is going on here? It's nearly New Year and you are making enough noise for the whole village to hear. Have you no shame? A gaunt, dark-skinned man wearing a worn cotton, padded jacket walked into the yard. It was Su Dashan, Su Yin's father. He had just returned after doing odd jobs in the neighboring village. Su Dashan was polite to outsiders, but tyrannical at home, quick, tempered, and prone to beating his wife. Zhou Yuan might act like a shrew toward others, but she feared Su Dashan deeply. Fuming the moment he stepped inside, Su Dashan would not have spoken at all if so many villagers had not been watching. He first glared at Zhou Yuan. Hold your tongue. How old are you? Still picking fights with your own child? Then he turned toward Suyin. Inzi, I know you are hurting, but you ought not say such hurtful things to your mother. She carried you for 10 months and raised you. That was no easy feat. His words tried to appear impartial, yet he laid all the blame squarely on Suyin. Enough of this. Come back home with me. Su Dashan grabbed Zhou Yuan's arm to drag her away. Zhou Yuan refused to move. She was still fixated on her missing livestock, her most precious possessions. I won't leave. Where are my ox and pigs? She hasn't given them back. Su Dashan frowned, irritation flashing across his face. You've grown bold these past 2 days. Do you dare ignore my orders? Come home. Zhou Yuan flinched and dared not carry on her tantrum. She followed Su Dashan away. Su Xiaojun hurried after them. Suyin stood rooted to the spot, full of misgivings. Su Dashan was a miser through and through. Normally, he would have thrown a huge fit over lost livestock, yet today he had simply dragged Zhou Yuan off. Something was off. Su Dashan pulled Zhou Yuan out of the yard, with Su Xiaojun trailing behind. Inzi, your parents are gone? Neighbor sister Wang walked over holding a winnowing basket and nodded toward the direction they had left. I passed the east end of the village just now. I saw your father carrying crate after crate of goods into that run-down old house. They looked quite fancy. Sister Wang lowered her voice and spoke in a mysterious whisper. My eyes are sharp. I even spotted several bottles of Mutai liquor. Where on earth did your father get so much money? Aunt Li, who had dropped by for a visit, overheard and cut in. That can't be. He was only doing manual labor over in Li family village. He gets paid by the day. He could never afford Mutai. The surrounding villagers chattered among themselves, utterly confused. Su Yin's heart sank. Mutai liquor. Only that wealthy imposter daughter would be able to send such expensive gifts. They had been in contact all along. In her past life, as a wandering spirit, she could only drift around the village. Before her soul faded away completely, she had never laid eyes on that fake rich daughter, nor learned anything about her real birth parents. She needed to find a way to get their address and information. Lost in thought, an awkward voice sounded beside her. I'm sorry. It was Zhou Lei. He scratched his head, looking thoroughly embarrassed. I was in the wrong. I really came here to pick a fight at first. I never expected you would feed us noodles. Suyin snapped out of her thoughts, glanced at him, and suddenly smiled. Well, look at that. Is this the tough street? Why is Brother Lei apologizing? Zhou Lei's face burned bright red. He stiffened his neck and defended himself. I may be no good, but I can't stand seeing children get mistreated. If I'd known how badly they treated Yaya, I never would have helped them. Not completely beyond redemption, Suyin thought to herself. Nearby, Luo Chao's stomach rumbled loudly. He stared at Suyin longingly. So, are we still having chicken today? Amused by his simple manner, Suyin laughed. Of course we are. She scanned the yard, looking at the 3 strong able-bodied men, and an idea formed in her mind. But if you want meat, you have to work for it. Since they were already here, she badly needed people to do heavy chores. It was the 29th day of the 12th lunar month. The terrible heavy snow disaster was only a few days away. We need to build a heated brick bed. Winters are freezing without one, Suyin said. Teeping village was in the south, and no local household had such a thing. But she had lived in northern military camps with Lu Yi and knew how wonderfully warm those beds kept people when heavy snow struck. Zhou Lei and Luo Chao stared in confusion. What's a heated brick bed? Only the quiet Zhao Wen spoke up. He studied the kitchen layout. I know how to build one. I fixed the roof too. This work is not difficult. Suyin looked at him in surprise. Quiet and unassuming as he seemed, he possessed practical skills. Good, I'll leave this job to you. She did not expect perfection given the limited time. A basic functional frame would suffice. She briefly explained her idea to Zhao Wen and then headed for the kitchen. Inside the kitchen, Yaya sat on a small wooden stool with her head hanging low, clearly miserable. What's wrong? Suyin squatted down beside her. Yaya shook her head and pressed her lips tightly together. Suyin guessed her daughter was still upset about the old hen Hua. She winked mysteriously at the little girl. Yaya, come with me. I want to show you something special. She took Yaya's hand, walked into their room, and closed the door. Under Yaya's wide-eyed amazement, Suyin focused her mind. In the next instant, a fluffy clucking old hen appeared out of thin air on the floor of the room. It was Hua. Hua. Yaya's eyes lit up instantly. She threw her arms around the old hen carefully and rubbed her little face against its feathers, giggling with joy. Mama, Hua is alive. Of course she is. Suyin stroked her daughter's head. Yaya nodded hard, overjoyed to hold Hua. She laughed and babbled, Mama, I'm so happy. Mama, I have a secret. I can understand what Hua says. Understand chicken talk? Suyin did not take it seriously. Children at this age had vivid imaginations and often treated fantasies as real events. She patted her daughter's head. Sweet girl, I need to cook. You can play with Hua for now. Okay, Yaya replied in her childish voice. Having soothed her daughter, Suyin returned to the kitchen and got busy. She chopped the 2 plucked chickens into large chunks and dropped them into the big iron cooking pot. She added no fancy seasonings, only pouring clear spiritual spring water from an insulated kettle to cover the meat. Then she closed the lid and stoked the stove fire for vigorous boiling. Before long, an irresistible delicious aroma seeped out through cracks in the doors and windows and filled the entire yard. The 3 men working out in the yard all paused their movements. Luo Chao's axe clattered to the ground, saliva nearly dripping from his mouth. Good heavens, that smells incredible. Zhou Lei swallowed hard. Even the steady Zhao Wen slowed his work and could not help glancing toward the kitchen. While the chicken stewed, Suyin cooked rice. In her past life as a wandering spirit in Teeping Village, she had remembered electric rice cookers from later times, which made cooking rice so convenient. Cooking rice was cumbersome in this era. Rice was first boiled partially, then strained through a special winnowing sieve to separate the grain from rice water. The drained rice was then steamed inside a wooden rice steamer. Suyin also cut some sweet potatoes to steam alongside the rice. As she worked, Yaya followed her everywhere with Hua the hen, like 2 little shadows. Yaya chattered non-stop, and Hua clucked back now and then. Suyin asked, Yaya, what are you doing? Yaya grinned. I'm talking with Hua. Suyin laughed, thinking her daughter was making things up again. Then Yaya said, Mama, Hua told me Grandma hid gold under her bed. Before Suyin could process what she had heard, Yaya tugged her hand toward the bedroom. Right under this bed. There is a wooden box. The little girl spoke earnestly. Hua clucked twice beside them. Suyin wondered if it could really be true. Could her daughter truly understand what animals said? That seemed utterly strange. But considering she herself had been reborn into this life, strange things could happen. Suyin chose to believe her daughter. Let's take a look. She fetched a broom and swept underneath the bed. Sure enough, a wooden box slid out. Suyin's heart raced. She lifted the lid. Goodness. 3 solid gold bars lay inside. Each was marked with its weight, adding up to 500 grams in total. Gold sold for 25 yuan per gram at this time. If she could sell them, she would get more than 10,000 yuan. A household with 10,000 yuan was extraordinarily wealthy in this period. No one in the family had known Zhou Yuan had such treasure hidden away. Suyin quickly closed the box and turned to her daughter. Yaya, ask Hua where this gold came from. Yaya babbled to the hen, and Hua clucked in reply. Yaya nodded and reported to Suyin. Hua says Grandma brought the gold back from somewhere outside. She carried it in a special bag. Every time she got something, she snuck into her room and told nobody. Suyin spotted post, office packaging traces. Evidently, the gold had been sent over by Zhou Yuan's biological daughter, and Zhou Yuan had secretly hoarded it for herself. Since it was hidden private treasure, Zhou Yuan dared not report its loss to authorities. If she went to the police, she would have to explain its origin, and her secret of swapping the two baby girls would come out. Either way, this worked in Su Yin's favor. She had never imagined her daughter could actually understand chicken speech. She squatted down and stroked Yaya's hair. Yaya, tell Mama. Can you understand only Huahua or other small animals too? Only Huahua. Su Yin knew full well what was going on. She cautioned her daughter. Yaya, you must keep it a secret about the gold and your ability to understand what Huahua the chicken says. You must not tell anyone, do you understand? Yaya nodded obediently. Okay, Yaya, won't tell a soul. Su Yin glanced at Huahua, her mood lifting even more. What a wonderful chicken. Later she would build it a nice coop and give it some good food to eat. Su Yin went back to the kitchen to keep busy. In high spirits, she cooked 2 extra dishes: preserved pork steamed with fermented black beans, pork stewed with vermicelli, and a turnip soup. Her spatial realm could grow all sorts of vegetables that matured extremely fast. Seeds she had planted the previous night had already partially sprouted. But she could not explain this to anyone, so she only brought out seasonal turnips. Soon the meal was ready. No sooner had the food been set on the 8-sided table in the main hall than Zhou Lei, Luo Chao, and Zhao Wen walked in from outside. They stared in shock at the spread of food on the table. 3 meat dishes. Luo Chao and Zhao Wen in particular came from poor families. They never got to eat such fine fare even during the Lunar New Year. Don't just stand there, come sit down, Su Yin called out. She served a portion of food for the child, scooping a little of every dish, so Yaya could eat first. She then turned to wash the pot, which made her a little late joining the table. When she returned, she found the 3 men sitting without touching their chopsticks. Su Yin looked at them in confusion. What's wrong? Why are you all sitting there motionless? She asked. Luo Chao scratched his head with an honest grin. The boss said we aren't allowed to start eating until Sister Su Yin sits down, Luo Chao replied. Su Yin turned to look at Zhou Lei. Well, aren't you supposed to be a street, wise tough guy? Where did such good manners come from, she said. Zhou Lei cleared his throat. I lived with my maternal grandfather for a few years when I was little. He was an intellectual with loads of old-fashioned rules. He also taught me how to read and write. Unfortunately, he passed away quite early. His voice softened. Hearing him speak, Su Yin's mind drifted to old memories. Zhou Lei's maternal grandfather had indeed been a respectable elder, once the principal of the village primary school. Su Yin had also met Zhou Lei's mother, Song Yun, a woman of great poise. Sadly, Song Yun had married the wrong man. Zhou Lei's father, Zhou Dawei, was a worthless brute. Su Yin kept these thoughts to herself. It was none of her business to meddle in their family affairs. She looked back at Zhou Lei. Your grandfather raised you to be a decent person, so how did you end up as a notorious local ruffian? Zhou Lei let out a sheepish laugh. What's wrong with being a ruffian? I've got brothers, things to keep me occupied, and no one dares push me around. His voice trailed off toward the end. Su Yin nodded and said no more. All right, let's eat. Only then did the 3 men pick up their chopsticks. Su Yin gave Yaya a large chicken thigh. The meat was so tender it fell apart easily with her small spoon. Yaya ate in tiny bites, her eyes crinkling into crescent moons. Mommy, the chicken tastes so good, she mumbled with her mouth full. Zhou Lei took a bite of chicken and his eyes widened. This is delicious. Luo Chao and Zhao Wen tucked in, eating quickly. The soup is so fresh. Luo Chao took a sip of chicken broth. As Su Yin ate, she reflected that chicken cooked with spring water from her spatial realm really was extraordinary. Meanwhile, in the run-down adobe house on the eastern edge of the village, Su Dashin and Su Xiaojun stared at a pile of goods, overjoyed. Several large bottles of mutai liquor sat on the ground, alongside fancy, wrapped imported chocolates and piles of foreign, brand bags, trousers, and shoes. Su Xiaojun picked up one of the bags and ran his hand over it. My elder sister is really something. These are imported luxury goods, incredibly expensive. Just one of these bags costs as much as an ordinary worker's entire year's salary. Unlike Su Yin, he curled his lip in disdain. She throws a fit over clothes worth a few hundred yuan. Su Dashin uncapped a bottle of mutai and sniffed it. What a fine thing, he exclaimed. Our other daughter treats me well. Su Yin has never bought me anything this nice. Zhou Yulan sat nearby looking over the items. No matter how fancy these things are, they won't fill our bellies or keep us warm, she remarked. She picked up a garment and felt its fabric. Look how thin this cloth is. The shoes have no fleece lining, and these snacks don't even taste good. Zhou Yulan felt discontented. Her daughter's gifts struck her as pointless. Last New Year, besides these goods, she had also received gold bars. This year it was all useless imported merchandise. She never spoke of the gold bars. That daughter had nearly cost her her life giving birth, so the money ought to belong solely to her. Maybe later she would use some of it to help Xiaojun get married. Su Dashan shot Zhou Yulan an angry glare. You ignorant woman, you know nothing about this, he said as he poured himself a cup of mutai. Su Xiaojun leaned in to smell it. It smells strange. Nothing like the liquor we usually drink. You wouldn't understand, Su Dashan said. This is high-grade liquor, of course it tastes different. Su Xiaojun smiled. Dad sure knows a lot. Zhou Yulan cared little for these goods. Her main worry was their noon meal. Heavy snow had blocked the roads, making shopping impossible. It was the 29th day of the 12th lunar month, with New Year's Eve right around the corner. They still had no food prepared for the New Year's Eve dinner. All their supplies were back at Su Yin's house. She resolved to go retrieve them once Zhou Lei and the other two men left. Lost in these thoughts, Zhou Yulan suddenly heard Su Xiaojun shout in alarm. Dad, what's wrong with you? Zhou Yulan jerked her head toward Su Dashan. He still held his wine cup, swaying unsteadily. His face twisted, hands clutching his stomach. It hurts so badly. Cold sweat streamed down his forehead. His lips trembled and he could barely form words. Medicine, get my medicine, quickly, Su Xiaojun hurried to prop him up. Dad, where is your medicine? I'll get it. Su Dashan gasped in agony and gestured toward Zhou Yulan. Your mother keeps it. Su Xiaojun spun around. Mom, get Dad's painkillers out, hurry. Zhou Yulan's heart skipped a beat. She kept the medicine, but she dared not let her son fetch it. When moving house, for convenience, she had wrapped all her valuables in layers of cloth and tucked them deep inside the inner lining of her cotton, padded jacket. The medicine bottle sat right next to the small wooden box holding her gold lumps. If Su Xiaojun rummaged for it, he would spot the gold at once. That gold was her security for the rest of her life. No one could find out about it. I'll get it. Hold your father steady. Zhou Yulan snapped and hurried into the inner room, shutting the door behind her. Leaning against the door panel, she carefully unbuttoned her jacket and reached deep inside her inner lining. Her fingers brushed against the hard wooden box first, and she felt a surge of relief. Her treasure was still safe. She shifted her hand and located the small glass medicine bottle, pulling it out. Confirming it was the painkillers, she opened the door and thrust the bottle into Su Xiaojun's hands. Only one pill. Give it to your father right away. Su Xiaojun shook one pill into Su Dashan's mouth and rushed to fetch water. Seeing both men occupied, Zhou Yulan shut the door firmly and slid home the wooden bolt. Everything outside was chaotic and frustrating. Nothing had gone right these past few days. She had been driven out of the big tile, roofed house by Su Yin and humiliated. Now they did not even have meat for the new year. But she still had this. Leaning against the door, she tenderly brought out the small wooden box containing her treasure, 3 large lumps of gold sent to her by her other daughter from the capital city. The thought of this secret fortune washed away her frustration. Once things quieted down, she would secretly take them to town to exchange for cash. Then she could buy whatever food and clothes she wanted, answering to no one. Life had been hard ever since she married into the Su family. She had worked like a beast of burden and had suffered political persecution because of Su Dashan's shaman, mother. From now on, she would live well for herself. Eager to admire her gold, she lifted the lid. Zhou Yulan's smile froze instantly. There was no glittering gold inside. Only 3 dull, dirt-covered stones. Her mind went completely blank. She blinked hard and rubbed her eyes. Still stones. Where were her gold lumps? Those 500 grams of gold? No, this can't be, she muttered. She dumped the stones onto the bed and frantically shook and examined the wooden box. Had she taken the wrong box? No, she remembered perfectly. Her daughter had sent the gold bars in identical small wooden boxes. She had put all 3 lumps into this single box for safekeeping. Could she have mixed them up? Panicked, she tore apart the bed, shaking the tattered quilt over and over. Nothing. She rushed to the corner and appended their worn cloth bundle holding all their belongings. Clothes, trousers, and shoes scattered across the floor. Still nothing. Her gold lumps were gone without a trace. Dash. A shrill, distorted scream tore from her throat. Where are my things? Where did they go? Mom, what are you screaming about? What's missing? Su Xiaojun called from outside. Zhou Yulan saw her son and almost cried out, but swallowed the words. She could not tell anyone. If her husband and son learned about the hidden gold, they would take it away. Su Dashan might even beat her to death. Her face turned pale, then flushed. She forced a shaky reply through gritted teeth. Nothing important. She smiled awkwardly, avoiding his gaze. Just some worthless little trinkets I misplaced. Her mind raced. Had she left them back at the tile-roofed house? Could Su Yin have found them? Unease nodded her. She had to go check immediately. I'm going out. Back at Su Yin's house, work was in full swing. Zhao was quiet, but highly skilled. With Zhou Lei and Luo Chao's help, they moved leftover bricks and cement from Lu Ye's house building project. They mixed mud, built low walls, and laid flues, working in orderly fashion. Watching them, Su Yin's plans for the future grew clearer. Once the snow disaster passed, she would travel to town and exchange her gold for cash. With capital in hand, she could start a small business. Thanks to the spiritual spring and fertile black soil inside her spatial realm, she had no doubt she would prosper. She would earn plenty of money to give Yaya the best possible life, free from all hardship. Lost in thought, she heard a sharp cry from the doorway. It was Yaya. Bad person. Go away. Get out. Su Yin's heart lurched. She sprinted toward the entrance. The three men working in the yard stopped and turned their heads. Zhou Yulan was trying to force her way inside, and Yaya blocked her path. Get out of my way, you useless girl. Are you asking for trouble? Zhou Yulan shouted and shoved Yaya hard. Yaya lost her balance and fell backward. Her small head was about to smash against the wooden threshold. In the blink of an eye, Su Yin lunged forward. She threw herself onto the ground, sliding her own arm beneath Yaya's head just before it struck the wood. There was a dull thud. Yaya's small head landed heavily on Su Yin's forearm. Su Yin gasped in pain but ignored the injury and pulled her terrified daughter tightly into her arms, shielding her with her body. Yaya, don't be afraid. Mommy is here. Zhou Lei dropped his shovel with a clang and hurried over. You old woman. Picking on a small child. Have you no shame? Luo Chao and Zhao Wen stepped forward, blocking Zhou Yulan at the doorway. Intimidated by their numbers, Zhou Yulan stepped back. But thoughts of her vanished gold filled her with urgent anxiety. She had no patience for arguing. I don't want to waste words with you. She pushed past Zhou Lei and glared at Su Yin. I've come to get my own belongings. Without waiting for a reply, she rushed into Su Yin's bedroom, dropped to her knees and reached under the bed. Old shoes and ragged scraps of cloth were dragged out and tossed across the floor. Yaya huddled close against Su Yin. She knew what her grandmother was searching for and obeyed her mother by keeping silent. Su Yin stood and positioned herself protectively in front of Yaya. Her gaze turned cold. She already guessed what Zhou Yulan sought and had a plan in mind. She turned to the three young men. Could you please keep an eye on Yaya? Go back to your work. Zhou Lei looked worried and lowered his voice. Cousin, my aunt seems unhinged. Be careful she doesn't hurt you. I'll be fine. Go on. Call us if anything happens. Zhou Lei led Yaya out of the room. Su Yin stood in the doorway and watched Zhou Yulan ransack the room. Zhou Yulan searched under the bed thoroughly and found nothing. She jumped up, ripped off the bed covers, and shook the pillows onto the floor. Still nothing. Where are my things? Zhou Yulan spun around, her eyes burning into Su Yin. It was you. You must have taken them. She pointed an accusing finger and shouted. You ungrateful thief. Where have you hidden my belongings? Hand them over at once. Su Yin met her furious outburst with a look of genuine bewilderment. Mother, what are you talking about? What belongings? Don't play dumb. Zhou Yulan advanced, spittle flying. A small wooden box. The wooden box I left under the bed. Don't pretend you never saw it. Su Yin stepped backward to avoid her spray. A wooden box? I have never seen such a thing. Lies. You are the only one living in this house. If you didn't take it, who did? Zhou Yulan was fully convinced Su Yin was guilty. I raised you, and this is how you repay me? Stealing from your own mother. Su Yin remained unperturbed. I truly did not take it. Mother, what exactly was inside that box? Was it very valuable? She paused, feigning a sudden idea, her eyes lighting up. Oh dear, if something precious has gone missing, this is serious. We should go to the village committee and call the police. Sue, Ian pretended to walk toward the door. No police. Zhou Yulan shrieked even louder. She grabbed Sue Yin's arm with surprising strength, her nails digging into her flesh. If the police came and asked what was lost, she would have to admit to gold lumps. They would demand to know how a village woman came to possess so much gold. The investigation might expose her other daughter living in the capital, destroying her hopes for the future. Cold sweat broke out across Zhou Yulan's skin. She stared at Sue Yin's seemingly innocent expression, doubts creeping in. If Sue Yin had stolen the box, why would she suggest calling the police? Could it really not have been her? But who else could it be? Her thoughts were a jumbled mess. One thing was certain, the police must never be summoned. She lowered her voice and snapped. It's only a trivial matter. No need for police. Sue Yin halted and looked at her with apparent confusion. But mother, you just said you lost something important. How else will you recover it? Zhou Yulan fell silent, stumped for an answer. Sue Yin saw her predicament clearly. She sighed and adopted a reasonable tone. Mother, you won't tell me what was lost, so how can I help you look for it? What if I threw it out with trash and then you blame me afterward? You have to tell me exactly what was inside that box. Then I will know what to watch for and can save it if I find it. That makes sense, doesn't it? Her words sounded soft and logical. Zhou Yulan's rage subsided a little. Had Sue Yin calmed down? She had always been meek. Her earlier anger must have stemmed from concern for her daughter. After all, Zhou Yulan was still her mother. New schemes formed in Zhou Yulan's mind. She still hoped to move back into this house someday and could not afford to completely ruin their relationship. If the gold could not be found, she would suffer terribly. Having Sue Yin assist in the search was better than hunting alone. After much hesitation, Zhou Yulan finally made up her mind. She let go of Su Yin's arm, glanced nervously out into the yard. Seeing Zhou Lei and the other troublemakers were still there, she pulled Su Yin further back inside the house. She leaned close to Su Yin's ear and lowered her voice to a bare whisper, behaving as if she were committing a theft. Listen to me, don't tell a soul. Su Yin was overjoyed inside, yet she cooperated fully and nodded hard. Mom, rest assured. I can keep a secret, I won't breathe a word. Only then did Zhou Yulan relax. In a breathy voice audible only to the two of them, she said, inside the box are gold lumps. They're worth a fortune. This was exactly what Su Yin had been waiting for. Her eyes went wide with shock, and she raised her voice sharply. Gold lumps. Mom, where on earth did you get gold lumps? Zhou Yulan nearly jumped out of her skin. She grabbed Su Yin at once. You foolish girl. Are you trying to get us killed? Keep your voice down. Su Yin still wore an innocent, astonished look on her face. Mom, I was just so surprised, I couldn't help myself. I just got back, I don't know what's been going on around here. By the way, Su Yin tilted her head, as if she had suddenly thought of something critical. Mom, before I came back, wasn't this room where Xiaojun stayed? Did you ask him about it? At the mention of Su Xiaojun, Zhou Yulan's first thought was that it could not possibly be him. No way. Xiaojun is such a scatterbrain, he cannot keep anything hidden. If he had taken it, every thought in his head would show all over his face. Do you think I wouldn't notice? Zhou Yulan knew her own son through and through. Su Yin sighed, looking troubled. Mom, I was just guessing, trying to help you get your things back quickly. She counted off on her fingers, going over every detail one by one. Think about it. Ever since I came back yesterday, I haven't stepped foot outside this courtyard. You've turned every inch of this house and yard upside down. I don't even have pockets on my clothes. Where could I possibly have hidden it? It definitely wasn't me. Zhou Yulan said nothing, yet deep down she knew this made sense. Su Yin went on. If we rule me out, the only people who have stayed here recently are you, Dad, and Xiaojun. Things cannot just get up and walk away on their own. Though Zhou Yulan said nothing aloud, her mind began to race with wild speculations. Her suspicions fell heavily on Su Dashan. Those items he had brought home today were supposedly sent from the capital. But in past years, whenever parcels arrived, a letter would always come ahead to give them notice. Why was there no warning this time? The goods simply showed up out of nowhere. When she got a chance, she would give Su Dashan a thorough grilling. For the moment, since Su Yin's attitude had softened, she would demand to move back in. The adobe house was miserable, and there was barely any food over there. Zhou Yulan cleared her throat and adopted the stern tone of an elder. Enough, let us set this matter aside for now. Look, it is the new year. A family ought not to live apart. It would look terrible. This big house is far too lonely for just you and Yaya. Here is what we will do. Your father, Xiaojun, and I will move back in today. She spoke as though she were granting Suyin an enormous favor. Suyin did not give her an immediate answer. A strange look crossed her face. Her eyes stared straight at empty space behind Zhou Yulan, as if someone were standing there. Move back in. I have no problem with that, but I wonder whether he would agree. Zhou Yulan felt a chill creep over her. She turned to follow Suyin's gaze. There was nothing there at all. What nonsense are you spouting? Him? Who is him? Suyin pulled her eyes away and looked at her darkly. Lu Yi. The moment those two names left her mouth, the temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. A cold shiver ran down Zhou Yulan's spine. What are you talking about? Lu Yi died ages ago. Yes, he is dead. Suyin nodded, her voice light and drifting. But he has come back. I was supposed to work overtime at the factory, but Lu Yi appeared to me in a dream. He said Yaya was suffering and told me to come home, so here I am. These past few days, I keep seeing him, walking back and forth right inside this house. He also knows Yaya got hurt, and he is furious. He says he will avenge Yaya. Zhou Yulan's face blanched completely. She had always believed in ghosts and spirits. Listening to Suyin, she felt cold breath as though blowing against the back of her neck. Watching Zhou Yulan's terror-stricken state, Suyin sneered inwardly, yet kept adding fuel to the fire with her words. Mom, you know what I am like. Growing up, when did I ever dare talk back to you? Last night, where did I get the courage to drive all of you out? Even I find it strange. It felt as though this body was no longer my own. I did not dare say this before. Grandmother used to be a medium before the old customs were banned. I was afraid of getting into trouble. Besides, grandmother once said my fate is peculiar, that I easily draw such beings near. Her words were half truth and half fabrication. Su Yin's grandmother had indeed been a well-known medium in the village in her day, and she had casually made that remark about Su Yin's special fate. But spoken by Suyin now, paired with her eerie expression, the words sounded utterly chilling. Suyin pressed her advantage. Besides, Mom, don't you find it odd? All our livestock vanished overnight. They disappeared into thin air. Zhou Yulan's heart lurched. That was true. She had assumed Suyin had hidden them, but thinking it over, where could anyone hide so many animals? It could only be ghosts. Cold dread washed over Zhou Yulan. She recalled how ferocious and unrecognizable Suyin had been the night before, as if a different person inhabited her skin. Could it really be Lu Ye's vengeful spirit? The thought made Zhou Yulan tremble all over. She stammered in her own defense, I never mistreated Yaya. The girl refused to eat and clothe herself. It had nothing to do with me. Suyin nodded. So that is how it was. Then you should move back in without delay. Lu Yi says he will only seek retribution from whoever harmed Yaya. If you are innocent, you have nothing to fear. He will not come for you. Zhou Yulan grew thoroughly uneasy. She glanced all around the room. Stop talking such nonsense. Her voice shook. Suyin took one step forward, once more staring fixedly at empty space behind Zhou Yulan. Mom, I am not lying. He is standing right there. His face is pale blue, and water drips off his body. He says it is bitterly cold down below. Suyin spoke in a low, somber tone. Just then a gust of wind blew through. A cold draft brushed Zhou Yulan's neck. She involuntarily hunched her shoulders. Well, Zhou Yulan swallowed hard. Since he is here, we will not move back after all. You three can stay here together. She kept edging backward as she spoke. Her heels struck the threshold, and she nearly fell. Suyin reached out as if to catch her. Mom, don't go. You were just saying the family ought to live together. Lu Yi misses you too. He says you looked after Yada so well in the past. He wants to repay you properly. Every hair on Zhou Yulan's scalp stood on end. In private, she had often beaten Yaya and denied her food. If that dead man bore a grudge. Zhou Yulan dared not finish the thought. She swatted Su Yin's hand away. No need. No need at all. I am perfectly fine over there. That adobe house, it connects to the earth. It is good for your health. Zhou Yulan babbled incoherently. All she wanted was to flee this haunted place. If she got tangled up by this ghost, what good would money be if she lost her life? But those 3 gold lumps were an awful lot of wealth. She gritted her teeth and forced herself to speak. About that box, search for it one more time. If he really took it, talk to him. Ask him to give it back. Those are belongings for the living. The dead have no use for them. No sooner had the words left her lips than Zhou Yulan fled without lingering another second. Her legs flew beneath her, moving far faster than a woman close to 50 ought to be capable of. Suyin watched Zhou Yulan's panicked retreat. Only when the figure vanished completely around the corner did she look away. She shut the courtyard gate and slid home the bolt. Leaning her back against the wooden door, she could not hold back a snort of laughter. There were no ghosts at all. Liu Yu had died in service to his country. His remains rested thousands of miles away in a martyr's cemetery. If his spirit lingered, he would be a noble soul who had defended his homeland. He would never appear as some malicious specter to frighten an old woman. Zhou Yulan was simply haunted by her own guilty conscience. When you have committed many misdeeds, every little sound and shadow is enough to terrify you. Suyin was in high spirits. She hummed a tune as she walked back inside. Since Zhou Yulan dared not move back, the house would be peaceful for the time being. She needed to stock up on supplies over these next few days. Meanwhile, Zhou Yulan ran all the way back to the crumbling adobe house on the eastern edge of the village, gasping heavily for breath. "Mom, what are you running from?" Su Xiaojuan's voice suddenly cut through the air. Zhou Yulan nearly jumped out of her skin. "Good heavens! Are you trying to give me a heart attack?" She clutched her chest and glared at her son. Su Xiaojun ignored her complaint. He held a woven plastic sack in his hand, a smug grin on his face. "Mom, look what I've got." Su Xiaojun tossed the sack down onto the rickety table. It landed with a heavy thud. Zhou Yulan hurried over and untied the opening. A strong smell of meat wafted out. It was a large slab of pork belly, layers of fat, and lean meat weighing close to 3 jin. Beside it sat a small sack filled with gleaming white rice. Zhou Yulan's eyes lit up. "Good gracious! Look at this meat. And this rice. Son, where did you get the money for all this?" Zhou Yulan lifted the meat and ran her hands over it, utterly delighted. In these times, meat was a precious luxury. Few families could afford such a large cut except for major festivals. Su Xiaojun sat down on a stool and propped one leg over the other, grinning broadly. "I traded for them." "Traded?" Zhou Yulan blinked. "What did you trade?" Su Xiaojun nodded toward the stack of unopened cardboard boxes in the corner. "Chocolate from one of those boxes. I took one box and went to finally see in the village. He is a shrewd private trader. He recognized right away these are foreign, import goods. He said items like this could only be bought with foreign, exchange certificates at the city friendship store. Ordinary people never even lay eyes on them. 3 boxes of chocolate got me this pork and 5 jin of rice." Su Xiaojun spoke with great pride, thoroughly pleased with himself. Zhou Yulan stared in amazement, turning to gaze at the colorful boxes piled in the corner. Goodness gracious, just that little dark block can get you so many real goods? She had scorned these items before, thinking they could neither fill bellies nor clothe bodies. She had never imagined how valuable they were. Su Xiaojun swayed his leg complacently. "Exactly. These are imported goods, luxuries from Western countries. Nobody out in this back of Beyond Village has ever seen anything like them. Only my elder sister, my real elder sister, has the skill to get hold of things like these." Zhou Yulan's heart burned with excitement. What a wonderful daughter she had. Goods she sent home casually could sustain the whole family for a full year. Not like that ungrateful wretch Suyin, who haggled over every few hundred yuan. Zhou Yulan quickly put the meat and rice away. She poured the rice into a cracked clay jar, rubbed salt all over the pork, and hung it from a roof beam. Once finished, she turned to Su Xiaojun, her expression deadly serious. "Son, you must never speak of this to anyone. Especially do not let Suyin find out. If Suyin learned how valuable these goods were, who knew what might happen next? That girl is behaving very strangely these days." Su Xiaojun curled his lip in disdain. "I know. I am no fool. I took the long way round coming back. Nobody saw me." Zhou Yulan relaxed. She stared at the pile of goods in the corner, her mind racing. 3 boxes of chocolate bought all that food. If she traded every last one, how much money would that bring in? And then there were the handbags, shoes, and everything else. The more Zhou Yulan thought, the more fired up she became. It hurt terribly to have lost the gold, but at least these goods were something to fall back on. Their lives could still turn out well. Just then, a loud bang shattered the quiet. The wooden door was kicked wide open. Su Dashan stormed in with a dark, furious face. Su Dashan fixed his glare straight on Zhou Yulan the instant he stepped inside. "Where have you been?" His voice boomed with rage. Startled by his ferocity, Zhou Yulan shrank backward. I just went out for a walk." "A walk?" Su Dashan let out a cold laugh. He strode over to tower over her. "You went to Suyan's place, did you not? People already told me." "You foolish woman. I told you repeatedly not to go near her. Do you ignore every word I say?" Su Dashan raised his hand as if about to strike her. Zhou Yulan threw her arms over her head in fright. "Don't hit me. Please don't hit me. I only want to fetch some things I left over there." "Fetch things?" Su Dashan spat contemptuously. "What precious belongings could you possibly have there? A few ragged old clothes? Or that tattered quilt? You go and make a fool of yourself for worthless junk like that?" Zhou Yulan's heart ached. Those were gold lumps, not worthless junk. Yet she dared not say a word. If Su Dashan learned she had hidden gold and then lost it, he might well beat her half to death. Zhou Yulan bit her tongue and swallowed her grievance. I could not get them back. That wicked girl refused to hand them over." Su Dashan snorted and lowered his hand. He pulled an envelope out from inside his coat and slammed it down hard on the table. It bore a bright red postal postmark. It had been sent from the capital city. "Read this." Su Dashan pointed at the envelope, his finger trembling. "What is it?" Zhou Yulan picked it up cautiously. She could not read, so she could only stare at the outside. Su Xiaojun, who had attended school for a few years, hurried over. "It is a letter from the capital. From our real elder sister." Su Xiaojun exclaimed excitedly. He fumbled to tear open the envelope and pulled out the folded letter paper, covered in dense handwriting. Su Xiaojun stumbled through reading it aloud. "Father, Mother, greetings, I am doing well here. Have you received the parcels I sent home?" His voice suddenly rose sharply as he read further. "Mom, listen to this part. I have secured a formal factory job for Xiaojun in the city. He will work at a printing plant, and the work unit will assign him housing." After finishing the paragraph, Su Xiaojun jumped for joy. "I am moving to the city. I am going to be a factory worker. And they will give me a house." Zhou Yulan sat dumbfounded, scarcely able to believe her own ears. "Is it true? Did it really say that? This is wonderful news." Yet Su Dashan's expression grew even grimmer watching mother and son celebrate. "Wonderful?" It nearly turned into a disaster. He pointed an angry finger at Zhou Yulan. "This letter arrived at the village committee a whole week ago. No one ever went to collect it. If I had not happened to go to the committee for business today, this letter would have been sent all the way back. If it went back, they would think we are rejecting the offer. Then someone else would get that job. Where would you go to cry then?" Zhou Yulan stared blankly, overwhelmed by his scolding. I never knew. I never went near the village committee. How dare you make excuses?" Su Dashan panted with anger. "You waste all your time fussing over trivial nonsense. You pay no mind to matters of this great importance. I warn you, Zhou Yulan, you keep out of trouble these next few days. Do not provoke Suyin again. If you ruin Xiaojuan's chance in the city, I will skin you alive." Su Dashan's words hit like hammer blows. Zhou Yulan cowered and said nothing. She looked at the letter lying on the table, then glanced toward the pile of imported goods in the corner. Her heart was a tangled mix of joy and sorrow. Joy that her son would prosper and lift the whole family's fortunes. Sorrow over the lost 500 grams of gold. If only she still had that gold on top of this job offer. She would be the most admired old woman for miles around. But the gold was gone. She could not speak of it, could not search for it. She had to bear this bitter loss in silence. Her heart felt as though it were bleeding. Was this fate? Gain one thing and lose another? Never mind. Xiaojuan's job and housing mattered far more. Fine. I hear you," she said. "I will leave her alone from now on." "Happy?" Su Dashan nodded in satisfaction. "That is more like it." He pulled out another sheet of paper from his coat and handed it to Su Xiaojun. "This came with the letter. It has the address and the name of the contact person at the factory. Keep it safe. Do not lose it." Su Xiaojun took the paper, carefully folded it, and tucked it deep inside his inner pocket. "Father, when do I leave?" Su Dashan thought for a moment. "The letter says you are to report for duty on the afternoon of the third day of the New Year holiday. You should get ready on the second day and set off early morning on day 3. Su Xiaojuan's excitement surged. "So soon?" Zhou Yulan cut in from the side. "What about us? Can we go with you?" Su Dashan shot her a glance. What would you go there for? Who will tend the fields? He is going to the city for the very first time. As his mother, of course I ought to go along and look after him for a few days. Zhou Yulan said as though this were perfectly obvious. When the busy season comes, I'll come back. Zhou Yulan also wanted to enjoy a few days of city dweller life. Hearing this, Su Dashan fell silent for a moment. Very well. We can all head to the city. Zhou Yulan's heart leapt with joy at his reply. She glanced at the pile of foreign goods in the corner. It's nearly New Year. Why don't Xiaojun go exchange some more grain? Su Dashan waved his hand at once. No. You women have no sense. These things are precious. We must not trade them away casually. Zhou Yulan looked confused. What good are they then? You can't eat them. Su Dashan shot her a sharp glance. You know nothing. These imported goods are impossible to buy ordinarily. Xiaojun will work in a factory in the city, where all the workers are townsfolk. He has to take these items with him. That way he can uphold his status and not be looked down on. Besides, he needs gifts to build good relationships with everyone at the factory. Zhou Yulan thought this made sense. All right then. We still have some supplies at home. Added to what Xiaojun brought back today, we can make do and get by. Just then, Su Xiaojun stared at the written address and let out a cry of surprise. This is the exact factory where Su-yin works. Zhou Yulan's expression turned tense. Su-yin is a senior worker there. Xiaojun's job background won't hold up to scrutiny. If she figures anything out, we'll be in terrible trouble. Su Dashan spoke gravely. We need to find a way to keep Su-yin from going back to that factory. Let me think this over. Meanwhile, at Su-yin's house, Zhou Lei and his two companions had finished their work. Zhao Wen stood beside the newly built brick and clay-heated Kong and inspected it carefully. Su-yin, I've finished building your Kong. You have to let it dry for 2 full days. Do not light a fire right away or it will crack. Su-yin nodded. I understand. Thank you. Zhao Wen gave a few more reminders. After 2 days, light small fires little by little to clear the flue. Once the draft works properly, you can use it normally. That way the Kong will last a long time. Su-yin listened closely and kept his advice in mind. Got it, I'll remember. Zhou Lei brushed dust off his palms. We won't bother you any longer, Su-yin. We're heading home. Su-yin fetched 3 envelopes from inside the house and handed them over. This is your pay for today. Local work usually pays 3 to 5 yuan a day. But you worked fast and did excellent work, so I'm giving each of you 10 yuan. Zhou Lei and the other 2 men were stunned. 10 yuan was a substantial sum in this era. Luo Chao grinned naively. Su-yin, you're too kind to us. A rare faint smile appeared on Zhao Wen's face. Thank you. Zhou Lei put the money away, then suddenly remembered something. Oh right, Su-yin. Tomorrow is New Year's Eve. There is a market in town. The 3 of us are going there. We got 2 old tricycles and plan to haul some goods back. Zhou Lei paused and went on. The roads are rough. You and Yaya had best stay indoors. He thought highly of Su-yin and wanted to look out for her. Su-yin's eyes lit up. Perfect. Could you buy some cloth for me from the supply and marketing cooperative? I want to make cotton, padded jackets for Yaya. Zhou Lei slapped his chest confidently. No problem. Leave it to me. Su-yin turned back into the house and brought out some cash and cloth tickets. Here's the money and tickets for the cloth. Thank you for your trouble. Zhou Lei took the money and tickets and froze. He stared at what he held, then looked at Su-yin. Sister, you're just handing these over like this? Aren't you afraid I'll run off with them? Everyone around here calls us troublemakers. We have terrible reputations. Su-yin smiled. I think you are good-hearted people. Truth be told, Su-yin had no shortage of money. She had savings of her own, plus abundant supplies inside her spatial storage, and the 3 gold lumps she had taken from Zhou Yulan. Even if Zhou Lei ran off with this small amount of money, it would be his loss. She would never offer him good opportunities again. Moreover, in her past life, though Zhou Lei had muddled through his first 40 years, he had returned home wealthy in middle age. Word had it he had become extremely prosperous. He had even funded the construction of the village highway. Unfortunately, as a wandering spirit confined to the village in her previous life, Su-yin never learned exactly how he had made his fortune. If Zhou Lei struck it rich again in this lifetime, winning his loyalty would surely work in her favor. Holding the money in his hands, Zhou Lei felt his eyes grow warm. He was seen as worthless trash. Folks would whisper and point whenever he lingered near anyone's doorway. Now someone trusted him. He could not put that feeling into words. He swore inwardly that even if a blizzard struck, he would bring that cloth back for her. Shortly after Zhou Lei and his friends left, the courtyard fell quiet again. Suyin walked into the house and spotted Yaya squatting in the corner, holding her hen Huahua in her arms. Girl and hen leaned their heads together, huddled over some secret activity. Yaya's small mouth moved rapidly, her voice hushed as if she were committing mischief. Huahua cooperated, clucking softly from time to time as if answering her. Amused, Suyin stepped forward quietly. What secret are you whispering about? Yaya jumped in fright and quickly clamped her hand over Huahua's beak. She turned around, her big eyes blinking, cheeks flushed pink. And nothing. Suyin squatted down to meet her daughter's gaze. I heard you chattering just now. Did you find something new? Yaya shook her head hard. It's a secret. A secret between me and Huahua, the little girl insisted earnestly. Seeing how serious Yaya was, Suyin's heart softened. If her child said it was a secret, she ought to respect that. Very well, I won't ask. Suyin tapped Yaya's little nose gently. Secrets are fine, but you still need to eat. Aren't you hungry? At the mention of food, Yaya's stomach rumbled loudly. She covered her belly, giggling sheepishly. Hungry. Then wash your hands and come eat. Suyin stood and went to the kitchen to bring out the meal. Dinner was simple, leftover chicken soup reheated and steamed white rice. Warm and steaming, Yaya ate 2 full bowls of rice. After dinner, daylight faded fast. There were few forms of entertainment in those days. Winter days grew dark early, and villagers went to bed early to save lamp oil. Suyin latched the doors and windows tightly and climbed under the covers with Yaya. The newly built Kong still needed 2 more days to dry out before use, so the room stayed chilly. Yaya curled up against Suyin like a kitten and was soon fast asleep, snoring softly. Suyin could not fall asleep. Listening to the howling wind outside the window, she planned for the days ahead. Early the next morning, Suyin woke to scattered firecracker pops. Village children were setting off fireworks. Times were poor, but people still kept up New Year traditions. Suyin dressed and opened the door. Biting cold air rushed in, refreshing her. Snow had been swept clean across most of the courtyard, only piled up in the corners. Suyin and Yaya tidied the house together. In the afternoon, someone knocked on the gate. Suyin, are you home? It was Zhou Lei's loud voice. Suyin opened the gate. Zhou Lei stamped his feet against the cold, holding a cloth bundle. When he saw Suyin, he grinned widely. Happy New Year, sister. Happy New Year. Suyin stepped aside to let him enter. You're back rather early. I hurried over to deliver your goods. Zhou Lei pressed the cloth bundle into Suyin's arms. Check if you like the pattern. Suyin untied the wrapping. It was thick cotton cloth, dark blue with tiny scattered little red flowers woven into it. The colors were bright and the fabric soft. Most cloth sold at the Supply and Marketing Cooperative back then came in plain gray, blue, or black. Patterned cloth like this was rare. This cloth is lovely. Suyin stroked the fabric, surprised. Is this Dacron blend cotton cloth? You know your textiles. Zhou Lei gave her a thumbs up, looking pleased. I got this through black market connections. Word says it came from Shanghai Genuine Goods. Yaya has fair skin. She will look wonderful in this floral print. Suyin was satisfied with the cloth. Made into a cotton-padded jacket, it would be warm and stylish. The money and tickets I gave you definitely won't cover this. How much more do I owe you? Suyin reached into her pocket for cash. Zhou Lei's expression turned stern. He stepped backward. Sister, what are you doing? Don't you trust me? You already paid me. The extra is my New Year gift for Yaya. Suyin froze with her hand midair, holding the money. That won't do. We must settle our accounts properly. This cloth is expensive. You don't earn money easily. I cannot let you pay out of your own pocket. Stop being so polite. Zhou Lei waved his hand, sounding exasperated. I may be a troublemaker, but I know who treats me well. Without waiting for Suyin to argue further, he turned and hurried toward the gate. Keep the cloth safe. I'm off. Suyin watched Zhou Lei's retreating figure and shook her head helplessly. Zhou Lei was nothing like the bad stories people told about him. Since he had sincerely helped her, she would not insist any longer. Suyin carried the cloth indoors and dragged a large heavy object down from the top of the cabinet. It was an old Butterfly brand sewing machine, black-bodied with golden decorative patterns, worn yet still shiny. It had been a wedding gift from Lu Yi, specially bought for her in the city. It was her dowry and the most valuable household possession they owned. She wiped the machine thoroughly with a rag and dripped oil onto its rotating parts. She pressed the foot pedal and pushed it down gently. Tap, tap, tap. Hearing the noise, Yaya trotted over and leaned against the table, staring wide-eyed. Mama, what is this? This is a sewing machine. It will make new clothes for Yaya. Suyin stroked her daughter's head gently. Do you like this floral cloth? Yes. Yaya nodded vigorously, running her small hands over the fabric, utterly enchanted. Suyin measured Yaya's height and size, picked up her scissors and began cutting with crisp snips. Just then, footsteps sounded outside the courtyard gate. The fabric curtain was pushed aside, and frigid wind swept inside. Suyin paused her work and lifted her head. Su Dashan walked in, hands behind his back. He wore a well-worn Zhongshan suit and a dogskin fur hat, his face fixed in a fake smile. Hard at work. He shook snow off his clothes and sat down uninvited on a wooden stool. Suyin stayed seated with her foot resting lightly on the sewing machine pedal. What do you want? Her tone was flat. She did not even lift her head. Su Dashan showed no offense. He pulled out his tobacco pipe and slowly filled it with shredded tobacco. It's New Year. I came to see you and the child. He struck a match, puffed twice, and exhaled curling smoke. Suyin, I've come with wonderful news for you. Suyin held her needle and thread, a faint mocking smile tugging at her lips. Wonderful news? When a weasel pays a New Year call to a chicken, nothing good comes of it. Speak. Su Dashan leaned forward and lowered his voice, putting on a mysteriously secretive air. I know you hold resentment toward your mother and Xiaojun. But life still goes on, doesn't it? Think about it. If you go back to work at that city factory, who will look after Yaya? She would suffer following you there. Suyin said nothing, listening quietly. She had not yet worked out his real motive. Seeing her silence, Su Dashan assumed she was half convinced and pressed his advantage. So, I've taken the trouble to sort something out for you. I spoke with Principal Liu of our village primary school. After New Year, you can become a teacher there. A teacher. Suyin's scissors stopped short. She finally looked straight at Su Dashan. Did I hear you correctly? You want me to stay in the village and work as a teacher? Exactly. Su Dashan slapped his thigh, talking excitedly. This is a fine job. The pay is less than the city factory, but you live right nearby. The school is on the west side of the village, just a short walk away. You can work and keep an eye on Yaya at the same time. You don't have formal schooling credentials, but you love reading. Everyone in the village knows you are well educated. Teaching the village children basic reading and arithmetic will be well within your ability. Su Dashan grew more animated, his wrinkled face breaking into a broad grin. Suyin, I'm doing this purely for your sake. Your mother and brother cannot be counted on to care for Yaya. Li left this only child behind. You must raise her well. Suyin studied Su Dashan suspicious. She could not believe he genuinely cared for her welfare. When she had wanted to study in the past, Su Dashan had firmly forbidden it, claiming girls gained nothing from books and ought to marry early for betrothal money. Now he was offering her a respectable teaching post? There had to be a hidden catch. Suyin set down her scissors, folded her hands in her lap, and looked at him with a knowing half-smile. Father, would Principal Liu really agree to this? So many villagers want this position. Why would it go to an uncertified widow like me? Su Dashan's smile faltered briefly, then returned. You don't understand how things work. Principal Liu respects my standing, and Liu Yu is a martyr. Our village ought to look after martyrs' families. I've already settled things. As long as you agree to stay, everything else is manageable. Suyin stayed quiet, her mind racing. Stay in the village. That was Su Dashan's goal. Why was he so determined to keep her here? Suyin lifted her foot off the pedal. Holding the half-cut blue and red flower cloth, she ran her fingertips softly over its surface and did not rush to reply. A teacher, Suyin repeated slowly. Su Dashan thought she was tempted. He leaned forward, and his wooden stool creaked under him. Yes, a teacher. He knocked his pipe against the sole of his shoe, sending glowing sparks flying. Think about it. Aside from village cadres, teachers command the most respect for miles around. No back-breaking farm labor, no wind or rain to endure. Su Dashan drew on his pipe. Smoke blurred his wrinkled features. What's more, this is an official formal post. I went through a great deal of trouble to arrange it. Suyin turned fully to face him. Respect is fine, but it won't fill our bellies. What are the actual benefits? How much monthly pay? Su Dashan held up 3 fingers. 30 yuan a month, plus grain ticket subsidies. And that's not all. You get paid during summer and winter vacations without working a single day. Perfect. And as head teacher, you will have more than 20 pupils, meaning more than 20 households. Every family hopes their child gets extra attention. Come festivals, you will receive eggs, brown sugar, even hens. Principal Lu's kitchen always hung cured meat, more than they could ever eat. Su Dashan spoke with great enthusiasm, nearly spitting in Su Yin's face. A little gift from each household adds up to quite a lot. Su Yin listened, inwardly sneering. She kept her displeasure hidden and nodded along with his words. It certainly sounds appealing. Respected, with extra perks. Truly a rare opportunity. Exactly. Would your own father deceive you? Su Dashan slapped his thigh again. If it is such a wonderful opportunity, Su Yin shifted tone, feigning confusion. Why not give this position to Xiaojun? Su Dashan's smile froze. His hand hung suspended in midair. What? It only makes sense, Su Yin said reasonably. Xiaojun is the family's only son, our future head of household. A respectable, well-rewarded job like this would suit him perfectly. He finished junior high school. He is more than capable of teaching. Being a teacher would even help him find a wife. I am a widow with a tarnished reputation. If I took this desirable post, villagers would gossip about our whole family. Xiaojun ought to have it. After all, good fortune should stay within the family. Su Yin's reasoning sounded perfectly logical, framed entirely for the good of the Su family. Su Dashan was rendered speechless. He opened his mouth but could not form a reply. This girl was normally quiet-spoken. Where had she gotten such sharp-tongued arguments today? If Xiaojun could work as a village teacher, he would never have gone to all this trouble. Xiaojun was supposed to take that coveted state-owned factory job. No. Su Dashan waved his hand sharply, sounding flustered. Xiaojun cannot take this post. Why not? Su Yin pressed him. Isn't he idle? Xiaojun is not idle. He has a far better opportunity. The moment the words left his mouth, Su Dashan regretted it. Silence settled over the room. Su Yin tapped her fingers gently against her knees. Just as she suspected. A better opportunity? She leaned slightly forward and fixed her gaze on Su Dashan. Father, what workplace could be better than a teaching position? Su Dashan's facial muscles twitched. And nothing special. He will be doing manual labor. You know Xiaojun is not as clever as you. Teaching children demands careful work he cannot manage. He has physical strength. He will carry heavy loads in the city or work on construction sites. Hard manual work. Nothing compared to easy teaching work. Su Yin watched him scramble to make excuses. Her suspicions deepened. Spoiled by Zhou Yulan since childhood, Xiaojun never lifted a finger around the house. He would never haul heavy cargo for wages. If it is hard physical labor, he ought not to go at all. Su Yin stood and walked to the window, opening it a crack. Cold wind poured in, clearing the stale tobacco smoke from the room. Xiaojun is the only son of the family. How can he do such heavy work? What if he wears himself out? Let him stay in the village to be a teacher instead. I'll go to the city. Su Dashan grew agitated and banged his tobacco pipe hard against the table. Why can't you tell good advice from bad? We want you to stay for your own good. What will you do in the city? Dragging a child along, what kind of work can you possibly get? Su Yin turned around, leaned against the windowsill, and looked at Su Dashan against the light. Dad, you don't need to worry about that. You know the welfare benefits at my factory. There is a special nursery on site for factory employees, and workers' children get free childcare. Yaya can be sent there right away. What's more, the factory also runs a primary school for workers' children, so schooling will be convenient for her later on. If I go back to the factory with Yaya, I have professional skills. My monthly salary plus bonuses will be more than enough to support the two of us. Besides, I'm used to living in the city. I can't get used to life in the village. With every sentence Su Yin spoke, Su Dashan's face darkened further. By the time she finished her last remark, his face was as black as the bottom of a cooking pot. He shot to his feet, knocking over the stool behind him. Absolutely not. Su Dashan pointed at Su Yin. You cannot go back to the factory. Su Yin watched his furious outburst, her heart remaining calm. She had deliberately provoked him just now. Earlier, Su Dashan had let slip that Su Jun would get a much better job posting. Now he was doing everything he could to stop her from returning to the factory. Putting the two pieces together, Su Yin's heart skipped 2 quick beats. Could it be that the place Su Jun was going was her factory? The state-owned printing factory. It was a highly sought-after position that countless people fought tooth and nail to get into. Back then, she had gotten the job not only because of her solid technical skills, but also thanks to a referral from one of Lu Ye's comrades in arms. Sujun had no technical know-how, no formal education, and no connections. What qualified him for such a desirable work unit? There had to be someone pulling strings behind the scenes. But the Su family's relatives had been poor farmers for 3 generations. The highest-ranking person among them was merely a production team leader. Where could they possibly get such powerful connections? Only one possibility remained: her birth parents. She reined in her surging emotions and forced herself to sound composed. Dad, why are you getting so worked up? Going back to my work unit is only right and proper. Why are you reacting like this? She took one step forward. Or is there something you are hiding from me? Could it be that you have some dark secret you're afraid I'll find out once I'm back at the factory? Intimidated by her gaze, Su Dashin stepped backward until his lower back slammed into the corner of the table. When had this girl become so sharp-tongued and formidable? Where was the meek, obedient Su-in who used to do whatever she was told? Extreme guilt quickly turned into burning rage. Su Dashin waved his arm violently, nearly knocking over the sewing basket on the table. Nonsense! He shouted at the top of his voice, trying to drown out his own panic with volume. I'm your father. What secrets could I possibly have? Everything I do is for your own good. What will people say in the village if you drift around out there alone with a child? The gossip will be awful. Asking you to stay in the village is giving you a safe fallback. Su Dashin gasped for breath, his chest heaving up and down. He saw there was no winning an argument with her, so he fell back on his authority as an elder. I'm telling you, Su-in, this is non-negotiable. You will report to the school after the new year. As for going back to the city, don't even think about it. Dad, please calm down. Su-in softened her tone. Right now, it was only her and Yaya. Provoking the old man too much would only bring more trouble. I understand what you're saying. Life in the city with Yaya won't be easy. At those words, Su Dashin's expression relaxed at once. He sat back down on the stool and smiled. That's more like it. I'm your father. I would never do harm. I'm glad you see reason. Does that mean you agree to the teaching post? Su-in avoided giving a definite answer, keeping her options open. This is a huge decision. Give me some time to think it over. I've worked at the factory for years, and it's hard to just walk away all of a sudden. Su Dashin did not want to push her too hard. If he forced her into a corner, her stubborn streak might kick in and ruin everything. As long as she was willing to consider it, half the battle was won. Very well, you ought to think it through. Su Dashin stood up, tucked his tobacco pipe into his waistband, and wore a hypocritical smile. Take these next few days to think carefully. Give me your final answer before the 3rd day of the Lunar New Year. I'm heading back. Su Dashin walked off with his hands clasped behind his back. Su-in walked to the doorway and watched him go. A cold smirk crossed her face. Try to fool her? Not a chance. Su-in went back inside, put on thick cotton-lined shoes, and picked up a basket filled with wine and meat. She gave Yaya a piece of rice cracker to keep her occupied indoors. Mom is going out for a little while. I'll be right back. Yaya nodded obediently, sat on the king stool holding her cloth doll, and munched on her snack. Su-in locked the courtyard gate, tightened her cotton, padded jacket, and headed for the village committee office. It was just past noon. Villagers were staying indoors to escape the winter cold, and there were hardly anyone out on the road. When she reached the village committee, an old man was dozing over a desk. Su-in stepped in quietly and laid 20 cents on the table. Uncle, may I use the telephone? The old man lifted his head sleepily, glanced at the money, and waved for her to go ahead. Su-in picked up the receiver and dialed the factory duty room number from memory. The phone rang several times before someone answered. Hello, this is Hongxing Printing Factory duty room. Su-in paused at the sound of the voice, then smiled. On Yuan. There was a brief silence on the other end of the line, followed by a sudden burst of excitement. Master? Is that really you? It's me. Su-in shifted the receiver to her other hand. It's New Year's Eve. Why are you on duty? I thought you'd bought a ticket to go home long ago. Song-on Yuan was her apprentice, a genuine college graduate assigned to the factory. He was handsome and hard, working. Many young women in the workshop secretly had crushes on him. Judging from his clothes and daily necessities, his family background was fairly well off, though she had never asked for details. On the other end of the line, Song-on Yuan sighed. Don't even mention it. I was supposed to go home, but I had a big quarrel with my parents over the phone right before I left. They insisted on arranging a blind date for me. I refused, and in a fit of anger I returned my train ticket. Uncle Wang had some family matters, so I offered to cover his shift. Happy New Year, Master. By the way, an old college friend of mine who majored in mechanical engineering is coming to Lin City after the new year. I'll introduce you too. That sounds great. Hearing her apprentice's voice, Suyin felt a flicker of warmth in her heart. Happy New Year to you too. Don't be too hard. Headed with your family. Glancing at the dozing old man in the doorway, she lowered her voice. On Yuan, I'm calling because I need you to look into something urgent for me. Sensing the gravity in her tone, Song On Yuan grew serious at once. Tell me, master. What is it? Go find Sister Zhang in the personnel department. She should be on duty these days. Ask her whether the factory is planning to take on new staff soon. Find out the new recruit's name and who gave them the referral. Su Yin's knuckles whitened as her fingers tightened around the telephone receiver. Song On Yuan had no idea why his master needed this information, but he never asked unnecessary questions. Got it, master, leave it to me. Sister Zhang and I get along well. I'll head over to the staff quarters to find her right now. I'll call you as soon as I get the news. Wait, telephones are hard to come by out in the village. How should I reach you? Suyin thought for a moment. No need to call back. This isn't something that has to be solved right away. Just remember what you find out. I will get in touch with you when I get the chance. She did not want to draw attention from the villagers, especially Zhou Yulan and Su Dashan. All right, you can count on me. She hung up, paid the fee, and left the village committee with her basket. Instead of heading straight home, she turned and walked toward the mountain behind the village. She had planned for this. It was New Year's Eve, and she was going to visit Lu Yi. Lu Yi's cenotaph stood halfway up the mountain, not far from the dilapidated mountain temple. She had built it herself. When news of Lu Yi's sacrifice had arrived, only his blood, stained clothes, and medals had been sent back. Suyin had chosen this spot on the hillside, buried those belongings, and erected a stone monument. Lu Yi's parents had passed away long ago. His grandmother had raised him. The old lady was in poor health, and a year earlier she had been taken in by her daughter, Lu Yi's aunt, who lived in the neighboring village. In her past life, Suyin had cared only about her own birth family. Grandmother Lu had been strong, willed, and difficult, and Suyin had treated her coldly. Yet after she and Yaya died in her previous life, it had been Grandmother Lu who had used her own funeral savings to give mother and daughter a proper burial. Suyin made up her mind. Before heavy snow blocked the mountain passes, she would go to the neighboring village to see the old lady and bring her some food and supplies. The mountain path was rough and snow reached above her ankles. Halfway up the slope, voices drifted over from ahead. Slow down. Don't get my new shoes dirty. The voice was soft and whiny, sounding familiar. Suyin halted her steps and ducked behind a large pine tree. Peering through the pine branches, she saw two people standing outside the run-down mountain temple. The man was thin, wearing an ill-fitting woolen coat. He was fawningly brushing snow off the woman's trouser legs. It was Su Jun. The woman he was tending to was Lu Hua, dressed in a bright red cotton, padded jacket with a full figure. Enough, stop brushing. Lu Hua pushed his hand away impatiently and stepped back. You're so useless. How did your sister take the big tile-roofed house back from you? Now here we are, freezing out in the cold. I'm warning you, Su Jun. I will not live in a crude adobe house. If you can't get that house back for us, we're done. With that, Lu Hua turned to leave.